Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're joining us from. Very warm welcome from us at the World Water Quality Alliance coordination team and UNEP. So we'll be starting off very shortly this conference. So as to get directly to it, I'm sure everyone's awaiting eagerly, and I think we have most participants in the room, so I think we can start, and those who will be joining later will join later. My name is Nina Rasakka. I think I know many, if not all of you. I'm the coordinator of the World Water Quality Alliance, based with the Early Warning and Assessment Division in UNEP. And for our meeting today, very warm welcome. So our meeting will run from in Central European time, it will be 1:30 to 5:30. In East African time, it'll be 2:30 to 6:30 p.m. So it'll run for 4 hours, and I think you've all seen the agenda, but I'll go through it briefly after our opening remarks. And so just very briefly, in terms of some very quick housekeeping, the meeting is being recorded, so we'll send it a recording after. If you are not okay with this, then please, yeah, I guess you will have to log off. But yeah, we did want to disclose that. Please do keep your microphone off on mute unless you're speaking. And also for bandwidth reasons, if you're encountering bandwidth reasons, you may also wish to keep your camera off. And so we will have a kind of designated Q&A sections during the conference. So do note down your questions, and we'll take those at a separate interval. You can note them down. We do have a Q&A box, and the chat is fine as well. And again, we are trying to make this meeting as interactive as possible. I know that we've all had experience in the last months of virtual meetings. So again, we try to pace it and look forward to your questions and contributions. Again, feel free to make use of the chat box to introduce yourself, to let us know where you're joining from. And in case you do have any technical issues, please do send us an email. And my wonderful colleague Anam, you can reach her at the email address below, and that's probably the easiest way to reach us now. And we will try to sort out any technical issues on your side, although hopefully there won't be any or too many of those. And with that, I'd like to move on to the opening remarks and hand over to Dr. Jian Lu, the director of the Early Warning and Assessment Division at UNEP, who we're very pleased to have with us today to open this meeting. Thank you so much, Dr. Jian Lu, for joining us, and for also for your support of the Alliance in our division throughout the years. So with that, maybe I can hand over to you, Jan. Please let me know if you can hear us, and I think you're on mute now, but I'll hand over to you for those remarks. Thank you very much. Oh, we're not able to hear you. Let me,
okay. All
yes,
right.
perfect.
All right. Now you can hear me, right? Okay. Thank you very much, Nina, for organizing this annual meeting. Distinguished members of the World Water Quality Alliance, our dear partners and colleagues on this initiative, very good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, wherever you are. I welcome each one of you to this year's annual conference of the World Water Quality Alliance. Let me also extend my profound appreciation to the work you do in safeguarding the quality of our water, and that and that depend on for protecting life and the planet. In particular, our deepest gratitude goes to Swiss Confederation, both Swiss Agency for Development and the Federal Office for the Environment for their general support, which has been instrumental in making the achievements and progress of the World Water Quality Alliance possible. I would also like to thank all the partners who have dedicated their time and efforts to this alliance. The mandate of the World Water Quality Alliance is a response to the UN Environment Assembly Resolution 310. That's the 10th resolution of the third UN Environment Assembly on water quality, addressing water pollution to protect and restore water-related ecosystems. UNEP, as the secretariat of the UNEA, is fully committed supporting the alliance towards enhancing the quality of our waters through enhanced monitoring and the closing of data action gaps. The alliance provides UNEP with the much-needed foundation to champion increased action towards better water quality through the science. Let me just see. Sorry. So the science, policy, and action chains. So we benefited quite a lot from this alliance, and we promise that we will continue supporting the alliance in the years to come. In spite of our difficulties in a shortage of staff and resources. But I hope that all the members of this alliance also contributed and benefited through these activities and through sharing information, data, experiences, knowledge. So that's a very good, very important dimension to keep under surveillance of the world water quality. And in particular, your support to the SDG related indicators on water quality is very important. And that is something that we also appreciate because UNEP is the custodian agency for 25 environment-related indicators, including water quality. So your contribution to this initiative also contribute directly to the world water to the SDG to the SDG targets. So with that, of course, I would like to take the opportunity to extend our gratitude to our partners in this kind of joint journey. So at the end, I know that you have a long meeting. 4-hour meeting is not a short meeting. You will exchange a lot of information and ideas and to push the alliance forward in the years to come. So once again, UNEP commits itself to supporting the initiative and with even with our limited resources and stuff. So because we're not only benefiting from this, but also the whole UN system would benefit from it, and especially in the context of water shortage, in the context of climate change. So with that, I hope the meeting will achieve good results and will explore and agree on the way forward. And I'm looking forward to the good result of this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jianlu for those opening remarks and for welcoming us and welcoming all the participants to this important meeting today, which indeed is our 5th annual conference taking place virtually this year. Before I forget this, I think for the next part, before I jump into the agenda, if I could ask everyone to put your cameras on so that we can have what is, I guess, what we call nowadays a virtual group picture. And so that we can maybe see everyone who's joined for just a minute. And if you could just allow us a few seconds to take a screenshot of this, of everyone fresh before the meeting, and so that we can also have Jianlu with us. Yeah, let me do that. Because this is also, of course, a classic one that we always tend to forget to do. So please bear with us for just a few minutes. And I will take pictures of, so that we have everyone there.
Did you finish the photo session?
Almost. Just 1 minute. Sorry, my computer is a bit slow. Just one more.
Wow.
And we're done. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so maybe with that, again, thanks everyone. Please let me jump back into the agenda then, and actually introduce the agenda as the next point of order. So again, just to go very quickly through the meeting objectives. So the point of this meeting today is again to review the progress and the current status of the Alliance. There's been a lot of achievements over the years, especially over the last year. A lot of change and of course some developments in the global policy context around water. So we'll introduce those and give you a bit of an update on new developments, what is the current status of the Alliance, what is the future of the Alliance, and with that also, as we do in all of the annual conferences, use this as a means to engage in an interactive discussion on the future of the Alliance, especially at this critical juncture where we are at a point where we're fundraising for a continuation of this platform. And of course, part of that is an important discussion on fundraising opportunities. So we'll hear, and we'll also be hearing from our work streams on some of the work that they've gotten up to. And we'll be very keen to get all your thoughts and ideas going forwards into the future. So if we go to the next slide, I will just introduce very briefly the agenda. So again, we have this agenda in kind of 5 parts. The first one is the review the progress and status of the Alliance. And we'll be moving on to a second item soon, which is an overall status update and new developments following this opening and introduction part. And so there we'll hear, actually, this is going to be really interesting part. I'll provide a brief status update, and then we'll hear directly from the work streams on what they've been up to, with a bit more focus on those who have received seed funding for this last third and most recent seed funding round, and what are kind of the products that they've developed and the kind of outlook for these. And that'll be continued with a discussion on questions, some of the lessons learned, bottlenecks, and outlook following these. And then going forwards, so following that, we'll have a 20-minute break, just because, as the director mentioned, 4 hours is long to sit in a meeting without a break. So don't worry, you will get a break around halfway in. And then we'll continue to the third item, which is an interactive discussion on the next phase of the alliance. And this will kind of be, there'll be a couple of well, shorter presentations here, but we'll hear from our colleague Stuart on the latest progress with regards to the indicator 6.3.2 most recent and third progress report that was just launched, which captures some of the global trends of how many countries and how they've reported against that indicator, which of course tracks proportion of bodies of water with good ambient water quality. And I'll present a bit on some of the UNEA resolutions, and of course the most recent water-focused resolution that was adopted at the 6th session of UNEA earlier this year. And we will be presenting what we call the transition scenario, but really the way forwards for the alliance in the coming year, and a bit on the kind of the vision on that. And again, this is an interactive part where we welcome your thoughts and ideas on kind of on how to continue, whether we've kind of we're linking this to those global processes that are underway, and also how to ensure that the work streams kind of can continue in a more consolidated form. And yeah, and then we'll get to the fourth part, which is focusing on fundraising opportunities. And again, I'll present briefly on the idea to create a fundraising kind of subcommittee that will support the incoming new re-elected advisory committee with ideas and proposal advice, given that this is really a key area of work for us. And then we will be wrapping up in kind of the last half an hour. So that's it. And I think with that, if everyone is okay to adopt the agenda, we can then move forward with the next agenda item, which is an update on the current status and developments relating to the alliance. And so, which I will present before handing over the floor to our wonderful work streams. Great. So again, in terms of the alliance, the origins, I won't go too much into this because I think everyone here knows a bit the history behind the alliance. The alliance was first convened about 6 years ago, following the adoption of the resolution to address water pollution to protect and restore water-related ecosystems that was adopted at the 3rd session of the UN Environment Assembly in 2017. And again, this resolution really focused, I think it was the first really water-focused one, that called for better data collection, water monitoring, capacity building, and then called on UNEP to develop some kind of global water quality assessment. So kind of, it was a resolution that didn't have funds attached to it. And so UNEP then, we convened experts working in the field of water, and to really start looking at how such an assessment could be compiled. But as a response to this, the alliance was formed as something that goes beyond just preparing an assessment that would reach a largely technical audience and maybe some policymakers, of course, with the kind of the executive summary, but recognizing that water quality is really an issue that needs a broad, multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary approach moving forwards. Next slide, please. And so moving from there, the World Water Quality Alliance, again, this was convened kind of as a response to those agencies who expressed an interest in working on the assessment. But again, it went even more, delved into even more thematics that really aim to bring together a kind of voluntary, flexible, open stakeholder network community of practice of practitioners, experts, stakeholders from across the board. So not just technical experts, but those working in NGOs, those working on the field, who of course are well aware of the issues that face, for example, local communities relating to water quality. And so today it is the Alliance is a network that advocates the central role of freshwater quality in achieving sustainability. We explore, monitor, analyze, and communicate and raise awareness on water quality risks at global, regional, and national and local levels to try and find solutions for not just how to better monitor our water quality, aligning with the SDG indicator monitoring process, but both what are those solutions for improving water quality and how to get a kind of whole of society approach implemented to really engage everyone on this burning problem, which affects all countries across all countries, all communities, ecosystems across the globe. So our vision is that the Alliance is a platform of stakeholders striving for a world in which ambient water quality is improved by moving from data to demonstrable effects and action at local, national, and global scale. And the mission, and again, these are encapsulated in a kind of vision and strategy document that we prepared this year, is that the Alliance represents a voluntary and flexible global network of scientists, practitioners, policymakers, youth groups, indigenous peoples, local communities, and other stakeholders to promote knowledge and provide agenda-setting leadership for the global community, including on monitoring and modeling, to help generate data that informs scientific assessment of water quality, and of course the translation of this data into actions that can protect and improve water quality. And the idea is still that we would kind of be able to carry out an overall, building on this initial global baseline display that was done, but to really build a comprehensive global water quality assessment, advocate the role of good ambient water quality in achieving prosperity, and indeed in achieving all of the SDGs, not just SDG 6, and identify knowledge and solutions for protecting and restoring both ecosystems and human health and well-being, which of course is directly related to the health of our ecosystems, and then provide experience and leadership, and also a platform for connecting to solutions for improved water quality that remain flexible in the face of global change. So the Alliance currently convenes 17 work streams. These are displayed here. This is from our website. You can see that they really collect practitioners from across the board, ranging from social engagement to citizen science, to modeling, to ecosystems, and to groundwater. These are some of the work streams that we'll hear from today. And then just to present, next slide, please. Very briefly, a kind of timeline where I was aiming to look at what the Alliance has undertaken over the last few years and how you actually see more even concentrated global attention on the water quality topic. I think now we did have the first UN level global conference on water that happened last year, the UN 2023 Water Conference. There will be a follow-up conference to that taking place in 2026 to look at, again, achievement of SDG 6. in addition to that, we of course have had the initial UNEA resolution in 2017, but also several UNEA resolutions that relate to water, if not directly, then for example, on lakes, sustainable nitrogen management, and nature-based solutions. Again, water plays an important part of these, again, if not in all or most UNEA resolutions. But we did also have a water-focused resolution being adopted at UNEA this year that UNEP will have to report on next year. And of course, that the Alliance is directly contributing to. And we have also had 3 rounds of seed funding, and of course, plenty of these kind of regular alliance meetings over the years. And of course, as we go forward, we've also seen increasing number of countries reporting on SDG 632, and we will be hearing about some of those trends later on in this annual conference as well. Just some achievements. I won't highlight too many of these because you'll be hearing about these directly from the work streams, but we did again undertake this baseline assessment that was submitted to the 5th session of UNEA, which was then compiled into a repository, a kind of pathway to a global assessment that is available online. And if you could click through, we'll see there's just some pictures to accompany this kind of list of achievements. Citizen science, you will hear about soon. Social engagement, we've set up local water forums around the world. And we've had some great achievements from the Friends of Groundwater, who've produced a set of guidelines, a white paper on lake restoration. We've had a series of use cases in Africa, kind of testing the triangulation approach of combining different forms of data to get an overall view of water quality. We've had the plastics work stream that's piloted UNEP guidelines that aim to harmonize the methodologies for monitoring plastics in fresh water, and that are now working on kind of a set of associated guidelines and blueprint for how to engage citizens in this monitoring. And finally, we've developed a vision and strategy that I'll come to a bit later. But just to say also that the Alliance, again, we aim to go beyond a technical audience and to really reach everyone. So in terms of some of those activities to raise the profile on the water quality crisis, and I think really when you hear some of these the follow-up presentations, we can talk about a water quality crisis, both where the data gaps and the trends are concerned. We've been putting out over the last 2 years a monthly newsletter on water quality related topics that also showcases the work of our work streams, other colleagues working on the topic, other UNEP initiatives, and kind of those individuals working on the issue through a monthly interview. And we do have, of course, a kind of social media channels on LinkedIn that have been very active. We've had in-person and virtual annual conferences that have created linkages amongst these different actors and captured the thematics and priorities that have also fed into some of the future vision of the Alliance that I'll present. This has been very kind of great achievement over the last years, but we've co-organized these innovation workshops. There's been a kind of a series now about 3 different workshops. The first starting from a virtual workshop co-organized with WMO, UNESCO, IAEA, to look at the interoperability of water quality data. That was then followed by an innovation workshop, again co-organized with the European Commission, JRC, who very generously offered us their premises in Petten, Netherlands, also WMO, UNESCO, IAEA, and UNITAR, to identify innovative solutions for global water quality challenges. And most recently, we had the same style workshop using a kind of sprint methodology, supplement that hackathon style, that was generously hosted by the University of Stirling in Stirling, Scotland, where we convened experts on Earth observation. And this has all led to a kind of these small communities of practice that are building even beyond the work streams to really harness the inputs of different practitioners from different disciplines to contribute to the solutions that are needed for improving water quality monitoring, but also those solutions on how to convene different stakeholders to start getting to where we need to be. And again, we have a website that will be moving to a more permanent domain. It's ongoing. You can still access the website, but we will be updating that. So again, in terms of the future, I know we need to move on in the agenda as well. We have developed a strategy and vision. The Alliance has leveraged significant resources from global experts and actors in the domain of water quality. That's helped to bring different disciplines together. And we did a very quick calculation, but we did estimate that, for example, just in the seed funding that we've allocated, which has been somewhere around the area of 600,000, this has leveraged resources of a total of that amount to a total of about over $2 million. So, which contributes to a ratio of around $1 invested to $4 coming back. So we do see that there's actually really concrete call for the need for this type of platform. And we actually haven't had all the work streams answer that survey. So again, this number may change. And of course, we directly contribute to UNEA resolutions, which are not limited to the resolution 3/10, but many others. And of course, the most recent one adopted this year. So I will end there. And apologies for going a bit over time, but that hopefully sets the scene. And with that, I will hand over to the work streams, starting with Katerina, who is our colleague from the European Commission, who will be presenting the Gems of Water approach.
Yes,
Hi.
just before Katerina starts, we're going to be moving the Global Wastewater Initiative to the bottom since they've had a few issues. So all the others will get bumped one up. Just wanted to let all the workstream leaders know.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everyone. I guess I can start and I'll give you a very brief updates into what we're doing. And for those who haven't listened to it before, also a brief overview on the Gems of Water. This is a project that we have started in support to the social engagement work stream. And I'll start here on the right of the picture. We at the GRC, the water laboratory, develop a method for capturing hundreds of contaminants, in particular pesticides, in water using the stirber, which you see in the scheme. And we sent out to what we call local science embassies the stirbers and other materials to be able to collect water samples and to perform extraction. The local science embassies are contact groups that mostly stem out of the social engagement platform of the Alliance. Once they receive the material, they can extend the participation to citizens that they already are in contact with, and they conduct sampling and extractions and send us back the stirber to the JSC, where we analyze it and share back to them. So what I can say is that the pilot has been already carried out in 5 locations. This was our initial goal, to test it in 5 locations. Those are Romania, Bulgaria for Europe. Then we have Kenya, Australia, and Costa Rica. And we're in all pilots at the stage of sharing the data, either to the participants or to the broader public. A big part of the activity, Hanam, you can go to the next slide if you wish, thanks, was also to collect feedback from participants. This has allowed throughout to improve the methodology, both in terms of logistics, engagement, motivation. And here you see some of the pictures in different countries where the project was piloted. And some people, they were particularly interested in, for instance, the stirber element, so the extraction that you see in the last picture. Some people were realized that it took a lot of planning and operation to make it really work nicely, and other highlighted the importance of coming together and also of exploring the area where they live. Next slide, please. Thanks, Anna. And finally, so this is the main work that we are focused on now. We are producing different outcomes and they're quite diversified. So first and foremost, we are focusing on publishing the results that we've had, and this we do engaging also the groups that have worked on the ground, collecting samples, the volunteers. Another big element has been creating dashboards. There are 2 dashboards that are already public and you can consult them on our website, and here's the QR code. And the 3 others are being prepared to be shared as well. We plan to also organize a workshop where we would like the groups to come together and exchange their experience and also what they've learned. And finally, there was a part that was dedicated to art as well. Last year, we collaborated with the artist collective Non-Human Nonsense, and we exhibited in Brussels at an exhibition. And here what we tried to do, and you see the pictures, was really to give a ghostly face to contaminants so that this water knowledge is also spread to a different kind of public. So that's it for my side, and I'm happy to answer questions later on. Thank you.
Hello, I guess it's my turn. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Claudia.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I am Claudia Rus Vargas from IGRAC, and together with Joel Porgoski from EAWAC, we coordinate the work of the Fresh on Groundwater, the FOG. And in the past year, last year and the first half of this year, we finished 2 main products. The first was the new groundwater quality assessment guidelines that were released in April 2024. And 2 promotional videos, promoting the guidelines. So we see how it's done, and 1 case study testing. And I think we can watch the first video at least. Can you maybe show it? Yeah. Thanks.
Almost all fresh water in the world is stored underneath our feet. Every day we drink it, use it to grow our foods, and to manufacture our products. However, while most of the general public attention goes to groundwater quantity, the importance of groundwater quality is still often overlooked. Although we are becoming increasingly aware of the occurring issues, in many parts of the world there are occurrences of arsenic and fluoride, saline intrusion, or emerging contaminants like forever chemicals as PFAS. Meanwhile, Target 6.3 of the Sustainable Development Goals seeks to improve water quality by 2030 by reducing pollution. Unfortunately, for most countries, there is no groundwater quality monitoring data yet. To have a better understanding of the gravity of the groundwater quality challenges, it's important to work towards a global assessment. Not just for scientific research purposes, but simply to take more informed decisions that can affect groundwater quality, both positively and negatively. But if such global assessment is so important, why hasn't it been done yet?
Groundwater quality is a complex task, even more than the same endeavor for surface water, due to its hidden nature, 3-dimensional distribution, and long residence times, among others. In addition, data and information for groundwater quality assessment are often lacking or highly dispersed. On a global scale, the overall groundwater quality is evaluated using different tools and approaches. The absence of standard guidelines for groundwater quality assessment has hindered large-scale assessment and cross-geographic comparisons.
This is why the Friends of Groundwater, a dedicated group within the World Water Quality Alliance, took the initiative to work towards a global assessment. A key milestone in this process has been the development of the Groundwater Quality Assessment Guidelines, based on the calculation of what is called the Groundwater Quality Index.
The Groundwater Quality Index serves as a valuable tool that simplifies complex groundwater quality information into a simple unitless value, which facilitates the effective communication of groundwater quality information into various stakeholders. The method of water quality index has been used across the world for groundwater quality assessment, with a number of examples from both developed and developing countries. The guidelines and the index have been tested using groundwater from Uganda, Sweden, South Korea, and Chile.
Want to know more about the guidelines and the Groundwater Quality Index? Go to www.groundwater-quality.org or watch the next video, including the case study from Chile. Because in the end, we will need everybody to become a good friend of groundwater.
So that's it. Thank you.
See, we have a video. All right, great. So hi there. My name is Iris Pitt. I work at Deltares, which is an independent knowledge institute from the Netherlands. I recently got involved with WWQA. Joost van der Rovaart, sitting next to me, and Tineke Troost have been involved in the past. And we collaborated with many people from the Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency, PBL. And Deltares and PBL are a part of the workstream Global Scenarios Ecosystem Health, of which Deltares is taking a leading role. And for this workstream, global scenarios of water quality were modeled with UN seed money for two indicators, nutrient pollution and toxic stress. And the modeling was done using different socioeconomic pathways and climate scenarios. So first off, the nutrient pollution. The QR code sends you directly to a peer-reviewed article where this figure on nutrient pollution is coming from. And both total nitrogen and total phosphorus loading and export to surface water and the export to coastal seas were modeled for 5 different socioeconomic pathways. And these pathways represent a widely used set of scenarios describing future development of socioeconomic and global environmental change parameters based on internally consistent assumption. And the nutrient calculations were done using the image model framework by PBL, and 4 systems were considered here: human system, agriculture, aquaculture, and nature. And when you explore the changes from the periods 1980 till 2015 and 2015 till 2015, according to the socioeconomic pathways, the natural nutrient resources have been declining and will decline further in the future due to land transformation, while agriculture, human sewage, and aquaculture are becoming more dominant, globally up to 80% of nutrient delivery. So, and of the figure, you see the situation in 1980 and 2015 and 2 socioeconomic scenarios, SSP1, which is the sustainability scenario, and SSP3, the fragmentation scenario with a more slow progress. Both scenarios indicate a large concentration of nutrient loading in regions with intensive agriculture and high population densities. And then for the toxic stress, thank you, the QR code sends you directly to a Deltares report describing the methodology and results of both the toxic stress and nutrient pollution, which is also visible on the UN website. And the fate and transport of pollutants through the landscape is highly dependent on water movements. Here we include a chemistry model together with a hydrology model, WFlow. And globally, over 350,000 chemicals and mixtures of chemicals have been registered for production and use, but it's impossible to get concentration in surface water of all of these chemicals globally. So for the present assessment, we use the Human Impact and Water Availability Indicator, which is the HIWAI proxy. And this is based on the work by Van Geels et al., which is a water quality model of 1,785 chemicals to estimate emission, fate, and effect on a European scale. And these emissions were downscaled using population number and GDP. It was found that these correlate very well and could therefore be used with global data. So by combining this HIWAI proxy together with the WFlow, we got some interesting results on a very high resolution of 1 by 1 kilometer depicted in this picture, in this figure. And the figure highlights the worst case SSP, but also the best case scenario shows that hotspots of toxic stress and as a result species loss are getting larger, hotter, and new hotspots evolve. So 2 important progress points I would like to mention to finalize this short presentation is that a paper is under revision that covers the work done for this work stream, and also the toxic stress data is since last week included in the WWF water risk filter, which means it is accessible for the public. And for follow-up, we are aiming to publish the HUI proxy in a peer-reviewed article, and we are looking for opportunities for further development of these tools and application. For example, we would like to investigate whether we can make an app making it possible to include this info from this workstream on a local scale and also involve more stakeholders. And finally, we think it's very important to make our results publicly accessible, and therefore we have a community-based open data platform called Blue Earth Data on the last QR code where you can access the data of this workstream. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them later.
Hello. Sorry for the delay. I was putting some links in the chat for you all on some key outputs from the ecosystems workstream. This is a long-running workstream. My name is Brian Spears. I'm one of the co-chairs. I work at the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology in Edinburgh in the UK. And my co-chair is Ken Irvin from IHE Delft in the Netherlands. But the ecosystems workstream has got a lot of contributors, and so we didn't bother trying to put all the logos on here because there just isn't room. One of the key outputs that we've delivered is a white paper on embedding sustainable lake restoration into the global policy arena, and I'll put the link for that into the chat. And as part of that, our colleagues at the European Commission Joint Research Centre developed a global community of practice on lake restoration, and this work is really in support of the UNEA resolution on sustainable lake management. And again, I've put a link to a recent analysis of the perspectives of that global community of practice into the chat. What I wanted to focus on here in this presentation was what we're going to do next. So as part of that, one of the key focuses of our group is to deliver on the recommendations of the white paper. And these 4 activities that I've got listed here are just examples of some of the work that we're doing in that area. So firstly, we've been working really hard to leverage funding to allow us to continue on this work. And so we're delighted that we have a global environment facility project called Upcycle, which draws on a lot of the excellent work that our colleagues in the World Water Quality Alliance are doing, and tries to pull that together in a project focusing on accelerating sustainable lake management with a focus on nutrient pollution and phosphorus pollution in particular in lakes. We have demonstration work ongoing there in Chile, but it's a project which is global in scope. Some highlights of the activities we've done recently. We recently convened a chapter of sustainable lake management in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have an upcoming event which was announced just last week, which is the Sustainable Phosphorus Summit, which is going to be held in Accra in Ghana. And for those of us who have been in the Alliance for a while, you'll know that the Volta River Basin was one of the use cases, so we'll be really delighted to speak to the stakeholders in and around that area, and that will be taking place in October 2025 with events leading up to that. Colleagues at IHE Delft are leading on the development of capacity development materials, along with our colleagues at WaterGems and other contributors to that, and that is to try and enable the global community of practice in sustainable lake management. We've been invited to support the development of the Kunming Global Biodiversity Framework Target 2 guidance documents by FAO, and there's a report that's likely to be published, I think, this week or perhaps next week, aligned with COP16 in Colombia. And then finally, a key activity of the Upcycle project is the development of the Global Coalition for Lakes. So that's trying to pull together all of the global actors, from NGOs to academic institutions to UN bodies, to try and focus their attention on sustainable lake management and the multiple benefits that that brings for society. And if you have an interest in joining this team, please go to the QR code and put your details in, and we'll send you further information from that. So with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Hi everyone, I'll continue with GEMS Water. My name is Kilian, working with the UNEP GEMS Water program. GEMS Water is the global environment monitoring system for water, and that supports member states on all aspects of ambient water quality monitoring. It's one of the longest programs in UNEP, and it has several pillars that kind of form the program. So GEMS Water will continue to be the custodian for SDG indicator 632 on ambient water quality. We will hear more about the work on 632 in more detail soon, but in general, it provides a great basis for engagement with countries on in situ water quality monitoring and data. It provides great insights into the data situation, but also provides an overview of the capacities that exist in countries. For the last 8-9 years, GEMS Water was supported also by Irish donors. That agreement has ended earlier this year, and we have signed a new agreement in April 2024 with GIZ on a cooperation that will frame our work for the next 2 years. It's the GIZ project, cross-sectoral implementation of the water climate biodiversity nexus to improve water quality and ecosystem management. And the different outputs of this project also link to many work streams of the Alliance. So one output will continue our work on citizen science and community engagement. There will be another output on capacity development for lake protection, which also responds to a UNEA resolution on lake management from the 5th session of UNEA. There will be an output on strengthening national climate and water data management and reporting capacity, which directly speaks to the need of many countries with regards to support to data management. There will be awareness raising activities and also a contribution of GEMS Water to a study on UNEP strategic's focus on water, which was a request from the latest session of the UN Environment Assembly, and that is supposed to be ready within a year. In December last year, we also signed a continuation of the agreement with the German Ministry of Environment on the cooperation with regards to the GEMS Water Data Center, who also maintain GEMSDAT, UNEP's global water quality database for us. So that agreement was extended until 2030, which provides us with great support from the colleagues based there. And of course, we'll also continue our work on capacity development. As I mentioned earlier, our agreement with the Irish donors, which supported a big portion of the capacity development work, has come to an end, unfortunately. We're exploring ways on how we can continue the work of the Capacity Development Center. But of course, many of the great products that were developed in cooperation with University College Cork and the Capacity Development Center. And here you can see the cover of the latest handbook on freshwater quality monitoring with biota, which was published in February. So many of these products exist and are very good. And so we're looking for partners in different regions of how we can deliver these products with partners in different languages all around the world. So any alliance partners that also feel like this could be something they would be interested in, we are happy to talk to you. And that's it from me. Thanks.
Pollution from unmanaged wastewater and nutrients is one of the most pressing global challenges. Emissions from wastewater are equivalent to the global aviation industry. Excess nutrients and pathogens flow into ecosystems, harming their health and balance. It also poses risks to human health. The good news is that we can make use of the nutrients and energy present in wastewater to turn a problem into a solution that is good for nature and climate. Nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and organic carbon are important fertilizers and soil improvers for crop production. All of these can be recovered from wastewater. Recovering nutrients could offset around 13% of global fertilizer demand in agriculture, reducing our dependence on synthetic fertilizers and reducing nutrient pollution reaching our rivers, lakes, and ocean. There is 5 times more energy contained in wastewater than is needed to treat it. This can be used to produce biogas, heat, and electricity. Enough power to serve around 500 million people per year and reduce emissions. To solve the climate crisis, we must take wastewater and nutrient management seriously. So let's turn this problem into a solution for people and planet.
Untreated wastewater is a serious threat to the health of humans and nature, contaminating our rivers, lakes, coasts, and ocean. It is a problem that we all contribute to, every day and everywhere. It comes through our kitchen drains as grey water that can be full of chemicals, from our bathrooms and toilets as human excrement that carries disease, from our farms transporting harmful pesticides, excessive nutrients, and agricultural runoff, and from our industries and cities with sewage systems overflowing and leaking into the environment. But wastewater actually contains useful, untapped resources that can become solutions to many of our environmental problems. This flagship product from the Global Wastewater Initiative identifies 3 key areas for action, along with 6 building blocks needed to disrupt business as usual and change the game, turning the problem into an innovative solution with the potential to drive new jobs, create revenue streams, reduce pollution, protect our marine and freshwater ecosystems, and human health. Join us on this journey to turn wastewater from problem to solution.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ricardo Zennaro. I'm also a UNEP colleague. I'm a project management officer sitting in the Source to Sea Pollution Unit. And I'm here today with my 2 colleagues, Josephine Wairimunduguti and Avantika Singh. And we're here to talk a little bit more about the work stream on wastewater and specifically about our work on surveillance for Africa. So you've seen a video which very much talks about the essence of our work. So through the Global Wastewater Initiative, which is a platform, a multi-stakeholder platform that brings together various stakeholders from around the world, we want to actually bring people together to act upon the challenges of wastewater pollution, which of course has a huge impact on water quality of freshwater and marine ecosystems. And we do that through multiple, I would say, streams of work. One being the policy work, another one being work on technology, so innovative, alternative, and low-cost solutions for sustainable wastewater management, and also a lot of capacity building and awareness, and awareness raising to actually shed light about the essence of the challenge, of the wastewater challenge, and also about the opportunities. You heard a lot, and you're very much familiar, I believe, with all the opportunities that we can tap into when we deal with wastewater in a sustainable way. And the Global Wastewater Initiative has also worked quite closely with WWQA over the past few years, indeed, to seek synergies to actually try to address these challenges. And we joined forces and started this work stream, which very much focuses on a niche topic, which is wastewater surveillance, and focuses on a continent, Africa, which is both a great example of surveillance and also definitely a continent that will benefit from more action on that and will continue to drive change in this regard. So I will stop here, but I will leave the floor to my colleague Josephine to talk a little bit more about the recent updates of the workstream. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. Good day, everyone. My name is Josephine Wairimunduguti. I'm based here in Nairobi, and I'm a program associate supporting the wastewater portfolio work. And apologies, just as Ricardo has said, with the Global Wastewater Initiative, and UNEP has launched a 30-month initiative that is supporting strategies, capacity, and data for global wastewater and environmental surveillance with a focus on Africa. So this initiative is actually creating awareness on wastewater surveillance and also the importance of wastewater surveillance in Africa as the first in Africa, and focusing with countries that will help in creating awareness on this. And under this project, we have 4 outputs that have 3 with 4 outputs that each output has 3 activity in each. And I'll just mention briefly the 4 outputs, with output 1 being harmonized monitoring approaches for wastewater surveillance between regions of Africa for ecosystem and public health. The outputs, for output number 1, it will focus on capacity needs assessment in Africa. And output number 2, there is foster enabling environment in all 5 African sub-regions to enhance coordination, good governance, and scaling up of wastewater surveillance for ecosystem and public health across Africa, leveraging south to south and triangular cooperation. So this output 2, among the activities that will be done under output 2, include having capacity building activities, that is regional workshops that will focus on enhancing policy, that will focus on enhancing policy on wastewater to scale up wastewater surveillance. And output 3, which is on communication product. We all know that with wastewater surveillance and also with wastewater, as we have seen in the video that has just been played, communication play an important role in bringing an important aspect of any topic that we would want to be reached with by people out there. So with output 3, it will promote and facilitate knowledge exchange and outreach and on wastewater surveillance for ecosystem and human health. And it will focus on developing infographics, story maps, just so that people can understand the importance of wastewater surveillance. And output 4, it will focus on enhanced capacity building for wastewater monitoring on aircraft and vessels involving at least 3 airports and 1 port in Africa. And among the activities that will be done in output 4 include 1 compendium that will consist of lessons learned, that at least people will get to use it and also learn and use it to scale up any activity on wastewater surveillance. And also we've revamped our web presence, our global wastewater initiative. So please feel free to scan the QR code that will take you to our global wastewater initiative page, and you'll see various activities that we've done and also what we are planning to do, and also join the global wastewater initiative. And we've also launched the wastewater surveillance web page. So kindly, as you scan the QR code for the Global Wastewater Initiative, you'll also see the wastewater surveillance webpage there. That's where we will put every activity that we will do. We'll put information there so that people can be up to date, and also people can learn on wastewater surveillance and everything that we are going to do under this initiative. And also it has our articles and web stories. And we've also done 1 event at World Water Week, and this event aimed to raise awareness around the benefits of wastewater-based monitoring and surveillance. And we've also done 1 inception meeting for South Africa under this initiative that we've just started. And the inception meeting just happened last week, where Ricardo was present with various stakeholders from the government and also from UNEP as well, so that we can take the wastewater initiative topic at a top notch, so that everybody can be on this board, so that we can all be aware of what wastewater surveillance is, and also learn and also be together in this. And also last week also we did we were in the 9th Africa Water Week, where we participated and had a good audience and also had a very good conversation there. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for these. I know that there's a very limited time slot, so it's difficult to present everything you've done. Just in terms of the last kind of quick blitz the work streams. May I ask Lesha, you to provide a quick update? Unfortunately, we weren't able to include it in the slide pack, but if Lesha has been co-chairing the social engagement platform, and if I could hand the floor over to her for an update on the SEP.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nina and everybody else. I'm trying to share my screen. I'm not sure it's working, but anyway, I would like to say two things. One, I highly appreciate all the work my academic colleagues are doing. But in the end, what we want to achieve, I hope, is that the outcomes of this research are actually being used in practice. So that's why we established the stakeholder engagement platform, which at the moment has 115 approximately members around the globe of local communities who would really like to use our research to help them forward. Unfortunately, I have to say that in the past period, that didn't really emerge. So we did two successful parts. Usually you get the bad news first. Now I'm giving you the good news first. One was our event in Constance, which was highly successful. Lots of people from local communities, including young people, that want to use every knowledge they can get to forward the developments in their community. The same happened in Nairobi with the citizen science workshops. But then comes the but and the bad news. All these people feel that they are not taken serious. All these people feel that they are not really helped by the Water Quality Alliance mechanisms or the heads of the work streams. So they're worried because they need this research. They want to use it, but it's not reaching them. When it comes to the seed funding, yes, you're correct, Nina. There was seed funding for the conference in Constance and a little bit for Nairobi. But when it came to the call for additional seed fund, none of the proposals of local forums were accepted. It was all research oriented. And that is what really worries us, because research without, in the end, an application on the ground is not very useful. So my dearest colleagues, we need your research. We need your input. But mainly these people need your research and your input in a way that they can understand, they can use, and this is not happening. So our current mechanism is not working for that. And it might be necessary to change that, because these people, and we're talking 150 local groups, which probably represents 600-700 people, might plus whatever they reach out to, is not feeling that this is helping them. My esteemed colleagues from citizen science, you've done a great job in talking to the academic world, in accepting citizen science. But the people who are actually providing the citizen science don't feel heard and acknowledged. So we have to do something about that. Having said all that, I hope that the World Water Quality Alliance will continue, but also that we find a way of better communicating between the work streams, including the stakeholder engagement platform, and that we will be able to make use of the research, because otherwise, what's the point? So I think I'm almost going to stop here, but I think we need to revisit the way that we're organizing this. I acknowledge the fact that some very important research is being done, but in the end, research is not a point, an aim in itself. It has to be used by these stakeholders. So I'm appealing to all of you to think ahead in how can, in the future, we use the engagement of our research institutes, our academics, better to go forward. Because as you all know, the world is actually challenging science as a resource. And if we don't make it visible how we use the research, we're going to lose to no end. So thank you for that, and thank you for a short intervention, and I'll be happy to discuss with any of you how to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lesha, for that both update and the reflections that I thought were very useful. I think it's certainly an area where we need to work more on, especially in light of your last statement about the world increasingly challenging scientific findings, which comes as a shock to scientists perhaps, but is something that where it's clear the need to engage with local communities, and for sure we will be. I think this is an area that I would certainly welcome discussion on, so that we can continue to improve this part of our kind of one of the thematics of our vision going forwards as well, which I'll get to later. But for now, thank you, everyone. Thank you to those colleagues and to the work streams who've provided a kind of a quick blitz presentation of their work stream so far. We're going to come now to slightly longer presentations, and this is to enable the colleagues and the 4 work streams who received seed funding this year to present their results. So again, in the interest of presenting what may be construed as these more scientific findings, I will hand the floor over first to Stuart and to Stephen to present the results from the citizen science for SDG 632, and maybe to all the colleagues who will be presenting, if you do have any reflections on how you have or will be communicating these results kind of beyond those technical audiences that I guess come as the kind of traditional audience that you may work with, maybe not so much the case here. Please also share those reflections, either in the presentation or in the chat. Thank you very much. So Stuart and Stephen, over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Nina. Hello, everybody. My name is Stuart Warner. I work with UNEP's GEMS Water programme, and together with Stephen Lozelle of Earthwatch, who you'll see in a few minutes, we co-lead the Citizen Science for SDG Indicator 632 workstream. And it's just very important to make clear that although we're leading it, there are many different people, many different organisations involved in this workstream. And our strategy, our guiding kind of principle in this workstream is about normalising the use of citizen-generated data for SDG 6 reporting. and for positive environmental and social change to come through that engagement. And the rationale behind this is that, of course, citizen science data can be a valuable source of in situ data, which is absolutely essential for better understanding how our freshwaters are changing. But it also, and it speaks to Lesz's comment a little bit, it provides a pathway for community level engagement, which is needed to improve and protect water quality. Because it's often these communities which are most impacted by poor water quality, but they're the ones who are best placed to implement the protection and restoration measures that are needed. But there are, for this to, go back one, Anna, but there are several barriers that need to be overcome for this to be normalised. And there's definitely issues around awareness, acceptance of the approach. There are a number of different technical barriers that need to be overcome and policy barriers as well. And this is where the work is. And this is what we've been strategically kind of focusing on through the work of this work stream over the years. Next slide, please. So before I hand over to Stephen, just to say that within, this is one work stream within the Alliance, and we have this much broader working group where we bring together lots of different partners who are both practitioners, academics and experts in the area. And we have a number of different projects and outputs that you're going to hear about in a second from Stephen, from workshops, and the amount of data that's been collected is amazing. The actual integration, we're looking at how best to integrate the data. We've put out a policy brief and a technical brief as well that helps to extol the benefits of this approach. And it is also having an impact at the SDG level. But I'll talk about that a little bit more. So I'll hand over to Stephen for the next bit. Thanks, now.
Thank you, Stuart, and nice to see you all again. So just a quick run through of what's been happening over the last year or so. So there are a number of projects now that are in continual expansion, but there were citizen scientists, communities, and we're talking hundreds of communities across all these different projects, doing monitoring, feeding into national and local management actions, and this translates to thousands of participants. So the interesting thing is they're all using a similar approach. There are local variations, but they're all gathering similar data. They feed into an international database that's open. If you want to go visit it, it's there. The data are all open, and the citizen scientists are contributing as well as collaborating between them. If you go to the next slide. So most of these projects are designed by a top-down and bottom-up approach to identify where there are gaps in information, where monitoring is required, where is there no information getting to the ministry for river management plans or for understanding the pollution sources and the conditions of their water bodies. It's done through training of trainers. So we train local persons who go out and then recruit within the villages, in some cases 30 or 40 villages within a river basin, speaking to the village chiefs or the leaders, and then trying to identify a series of citizen scientists who are then trained. There was the opportunity last year to bring many of these participants together in Nairobi for a knowledge exchange between different projects, because there are challenges. It all doesn't work like clockwork, and the fact that these different project leaders, participants can join together and talk about it was a big benefit. There is, through all this discussion, we've found different knowledge gaps, spatial knowledge gaps that are being filled as more funds are made available. And actually in these last month in a couple of the countries, but back in March in most of the others, there was a knowledge exchange workshop. So where the trainers and the project managers go back into the villages, which isn't always the easiest thing, and feedback and have discussions about what the citizen scientists are monitoring within the villages, as well as how that fits within the larger river basin conditions. And for the first time, these citizen scientists, who are normal citizens, typically 60% male, 40% female, young people usually, had the opportunity to feed into river basin management plans in a couple of these projects. So the strength there is that we're allowing people to feed into what the overall management of their environment is, and they're feeding with knowledge, they're feeding with their historic understanding and everything else. The next steps are to understand more about the training, more about how to get this information to be impactful, and to this end, all the teams, so certainly not just Stuart and I, but a whole large group of people got together and worked on a policy brief about the role of citizen science in improving water quality. So this is focused on allowing people from ministries, from focal points, from the decision-making level to understand how citizen science can be used to improve the national water quality monitoring and the national water quality management. So it's something where the team dedicated a large amount of time and effort looking at best practices and trying to bring that together in a single document that could be used in the future. Next slide, please. And this last seed funding was focused on data integration. In most of these countries, there are multiple sources of data. Sometimes it's the ministry or the local agency. Sometimes it's multiple citizen science projects. So we looked at integrating data from multiple projects, from multiple levels, into a common understanding of the conditions of a river basin or river basins. And we did this in 2 countries, South Africa and Kenya, with the wonderful colleagues from both. Ground Truth in South Africa rolled it out to a whole number of river basins. And the RUIs from Kenya, led by Enoch, were again brought to bring data that they had on pieces of paper on various computers into a system that was online, bringing together with that also citizen science data from several different projects. So the idea is to get data integration so that the decision makers, as well as the communities, can understand what's happening to their environment and how possible improvements can be made. This resulted in a very well-managed workshop set up by Drinkable Rivers, where we spoke about how we can move forward at this, and it's just the beginning. So if you want to join, it would be great to have you into this work stream and also feeding into these opportunities as they move forward. Back over to Stuart.
Brilliant, thanks, Stephen. So just to say, in terms of impact, it is significant. So of those projects that we have up and running in Africa already, 2 countries have already combined citizen science data with their national monitoring program for SDG 6 reporting. Now this is a first. This hasn't happened before now in any of the SDG 6 indicators. So Sierra Leone and Zambia are leading the way. So in Sierra Leone, it's the National Water Resources Management Agency. They're leading the work there. And in Zambia, it's WWF Zambia and WAMA, the Water Resource Management Authority, are leading the work there together. And what you can see here is a screenshot of the latest progress report, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on in this meeting, where we do a special, there's a focus box all about this work and how this work fits into the SDG work, and how they dovetail together. So that's it, I think. And just the last slide, just to say that all of this is kind of working towards this normalization. You know, we have to upscale, and there are barriers that need to be overcome, and we do need more innovation. So our plan over the next few years is to expand the existing projects, start new projects, try and look at these financial and technical innovations that we can help us to overcome some of these barriers. We really do need to embed citizen science into policy as a legitimate and accepted way of incorporating citizen science generated data. And there's still a big job needs to be done on raising awareness. We're on that path, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done. That's us, I think. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. and Stephen. I think moving on, just for the sake of time, I do see that there's well, let's take one question. There's a question from Lesha on the chat before moving on to the next presentation on water quality modeling. So Lesha is asking, how do we involve the other 191 member states and connect local people to implement? So I guess the question is essentially, what are your thoughts on making sure more countries use this to contribute to their SDG indicator monitoring and improving water quality monitoring in general?
Yeah, will I have a first go, Stephen, or do you want to go first?
No, you go first, do it. You're the one with the hair, so.
Not so much. But anyway, I think no, it is going to be a long road on that one to make sure all the other member states also incorporate it, and that's why we have the policy brief that really, and that was the purpose of that, and within that policy brief and the more expansive technical brief, there are 4 different entry points based on the country's national monitoring capacity and also the activity of citizen science projects in that country. So there's 4 different entry pathways or entry points or pathways through there. But ultimately, I think we need champions, and this is what this work is doing. So we have 2 champions already. We have these other projects underway already in Africa. So hopefully during the next data drive in 2026, they'll also be able to have sufficient data that they can bring into their national reporting. But also, I think it's important to say that it's not just those countries that have limited in the amount of data that they have, especially the low-income countries, but also in higher income countries. There's huge gaps in data, especially local water bodies. We have very little understanding of what's going on, and often national monitoring programs are being consolidated and downscaled. So so there's definitely a role, I think, as we go forward for this approach, and it's applicable in all countries, but it is going to take time, of course. Thanks. Stephen?
Yeah, I would just second that. I think expansion by example would be the best way to describe it. As we see that's happening within the projects that we're involved in, once one river basin community or communities start to demonstrate the strength of this, the river basin next door wants to participate. So I think if the more we can, getting back to Lesha's point, the more we can publicize this, get the world to know that the power of involving communities in the monitoring and management, which is basic and it's not new, I think the more easier it will become to expand this. But it's not an instantaneous process. So thank you, Lesha, for the comment. And
Thank you, Stuart and Stephen, and thank you, Lesha, for the question. I think the power of example is very strong. So, and that's what we're here also to support you with. And now moving on to the next work stream, I'll hand over to Stein Peters to present the results of the water quality modeling work stream.
Thank you so much.
Over to you.
I'm Stein Peters. I'm a postdoc working in Wageningen, mostly working on microbial water quality. And right now I'm a representative of this work stream. And we are basically a community of water quality modelers with a focus on large-scale models. And most of our models output contaminants and loads and concentrations of contaminants in aquatic systems, which can be extremely helpful in areas where measurements are sparse. Examples of we have already seen today. And in addition, using models, we can look into the potential future by setting up scenarios for the model to run on. And in this way, we can predict changes in water quality under different hypothetical scenarios and test the effect of proposed policies. And previously, this community of large-scale water quality modelers have come together to develop some common scenarios in both climate change and changes in socioeconomic development. And this effort is seen and is still seen as incredibly important in order to be able to compare these different large-scale models, at least to be able to compare the output. But similarly, the community has also noted a distinct lack of communal indicators, where an indicator is, for example, the presence of fecal coliforms in water, as a stand-in for fecal contamination in that water. But currently, not all of these models use the same indicators as output. And even though they may use the same scenarios to model all these, they use the same scenarios, the difference in output still makes comparison between different large-scale models difficult. And that kind of also brings us to the next slide. This picture is just as a background. We had some objectives basically to address this, this issue. And these are very small for me, so let me open my own slides so I can read the text. So we had two main objectives in the short term, at least. So developing a comprehensive scenario analysis to evaluate future changes. And part of this was already done. So, and I wasn't involved, so I left it gray for now. And the second one, developing and assessing water quality indicators, is something that we've been working on for the last few months when I was hired. And that resulted in a few outputs or deliverables. And the first is the successful execution of a workshop organized in Wageningen, where we had a good look at what we can actually output with all the different models and all the different scenarios that we have. So the output in terms of scientific output. The second is a review of scientific and gray literature of indicators, which is something that we have performed. And the second thing that that resulted in is an article both in layman's terms and in a scientific article on water quality indicators. And specifically, it is an article that is about what indicators are and what indicators are, or at least what indicators we can use as a shared set of indicators for all global or large-scale water quality models. And those are the last two points in red, basically, that are still in progress, but have not been done yet. And I want to talk specifically about that paper that we're currently writing, and that's on the next slide. And indicators in general, people have a lot of opinions about indicators, at least when you talk to them. They have very strong opinions about what an indicator is and what it's supposed to be. And in general, an indicator seems to stand for, it stands in for something else. So you have temperature, which stands in for climate change. You have a color change and a chemical A, which stands in for the presence and abundance of a chemical B, etc. So there's always something that stands in for something else. And these indicators are very much widespread. For example, on the next slide, you have indicators in philosophy. At least if you are into Kant, he says, well, you have an object. We perceive that object through perceptions, but we don't know the object in itself. So then our perceptions are already indicators of something else. But we also have indicators in other fields of science. So this is a picture I made in the past of some cells. And in lab science, or at least when you do experimental science, direct observations are very rare. That's a good question, Lesha. Let me get back to that later. Direct observations are very rare. Most observations are mediated by indicators. And an example I put here is this cell is colored by different dyes, and these dyes preferentially like to be in a specific location. So then this dye basically stands in, for example, for the cell membrane. But this is qualitatively different from the indicators that are used in environmental science, which are what we are doing. For example, in what we are doing, so the environmental sciences, we are very much aware that we are using indicators, and that the indicators, what we are indicating is very much complex. That's why we are using these indicators. So we are using indicators to reduce complexity. We are using, and these indicators, that's also very much a difference, is that these indicators tend to be a part of whatever is being indicated. For example, if you think of colony forming units in microbiological water quality, these bacteriums are part of the quality of the water. And that's very much different from, for example, that membrane dye, which is not part of the membrane at all. But all of these things together basically lead to a discussion of indicators and what indicators are. And from there, we made a list of indicators used in water quality modeling, large-scale water quality modeling, and made an assessment of what these indicators are good at, what they are not good at, which indicators have promise for using for these large-scale models. And once we have assembled this set of indicators for use in many of these large-scale models, that makes us able to better predict and compare these large-scale models, which in turn will be useful specifically to create. How did I want to say this? Create specific will be much better. Wait. Had a nice text written. Let me have a look. Yeah, so once we are able to compare these large-scale models in a better way, we will be much better able to predict changes in water quality in terms of when the climate changes and also when socioeconomic development changes. So that in part answers your question, Lesha, was it allows us to better predict how climate and other developments are going to affect water quality in the future. But it doesn't really answer your question at the same time, because this is still science and it's not yet the part where we reach out to people and act on that part. But that also leads me to one last thing that I wanted to say, and that's part of the article that we are writing includes a poll where we poll at least the World Water Quality Alliance for their opinions on these indicators, on the set of indicators that we made, but also on indicators in general. So you can look forward to filling in that poll when I send it out to all of you in the near future. And with that, I would like to thank you for listening to me ramble about indicators.
Thank you, Stijn. Just perfectly ended. So for the sake of time, I think we'll carry on with the next presentation. But I think it would be, I'll give you some time to think about this, but I think Lesha posed a great question. I know he had partly answered it. And I think this is one of the examples of how can we translate this type of very intricate science and really cutting edge work. And of course, what you've been able to do is to bring together this community of modelers who are experts on indicators, on looking at how that water quality can evolve under different scenarios. And I think, as I understand, you're using the climate change scenarios. And it's maybe a question for the entire audience. Again, how do we, when we think about those communities on the ground, and then we think about the scientists who are doing this work, obviously there's two different types of language going on. How can we break down those barriers and communicate the science and the work that you're doing on identifying these common indicators? How, you know, what kind of products and how could you tangibly explain this to the communities who are, of course, noticing that their water is getting more and more dirty, or in episodes of heat waves, who notice increased water degradation? I guess how would you go about that, and how can you package this information in a way so as to support these local community groups, for instance, communicate onwards to their local policymakers, to then communicate forwards to the regional policymakers? I think that's something that we haven't quite cracked. And of course, the science policy and the whole question of communicating science is one that keeps coming up. But I think especially this would be a fascinating question to delve into. So if you have any thoughts, I'd love to come back to this topic maybe as we have the Q&A. Thank you. With that, I will hand over to Harriet Wilson from the Earth Observation Workstream. Harriet, over to you.
Great, thank you. Firstly, thanks to, I don't know if I've frozen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay,
yeah.
Just my screen is frozen. Okay, so, you can't see me. Okay, there we go. Thanks to Anna and Nina for bringing us all together again. So my name is Harriet Wilson. I work at the University of Stirling in Scotland, and I'm coordinating the Earth Observation Workstream along with others, including Irene Politi at Brockman Consult and Carmen Solero at 3Data. So we are focused on the integration of Earth observation, particularly satellite data, into water quality monitoring. We're an open group. Anyone can join us. There's the QR code there, which will take you to the page where you can add your email for the mailing list. You can also email me. I'll put my email in the chat. We have open meetings every month or so, and we share funding opportunities, ideas, challenges we're having about Earth observation data. And we interact with other Earth observation communities of practice like Geo Aquawatch and Geo Health recently. Cool, so I'll just change slide, next slide. So I'm going to present some results from our seed funding project, which was based on defining the Earth observation pathway for SDG indicator 632. So that's proportion of bodies of water with good ambient water quality, as we have heard. This project started with a call to see who was interested in the open monthly meeting. And from there, those that were interested got involved. So it's a very kind of open approach. There are all of our partners there, which include companies, universities, organizations, and also unaffiliated individuals who are interested in working with Earth observation data or learning more about that. And we're kind of a mixed group of experts and users and different kind of levels of expertise. Next slide. So we started from kind of two minds. On the one hand, some of us actually come from organizations that produce Earth observation products for water quality, free open access water quality products often, and we're very aware of the benefits that this type of data can have, particularly if used appropriately, and particularly for countries which lack other sources of data. So on the other hand, many of our participants maybe know firsthand what the barriers are of using Earth observation data, which could include their own capacity and knowledge, so not having the information available to you, and organizational infrastructure and computational barriers as well, and also the barriers of products not being provided in appropriate user ways. So we have these two perspectives. Yeah. And so we came up with the idea to develop a pathway. So this is a pathway towards SDG ready Earth observation data for 632. So activity one was all about working closely with the intended users, which in this case are the SDG focal points and decision makers on SDG reporting through a co-design relationship. The second activity was to develop the indicator for SDG 632 that would provide a clear classification on water body quality in a simple and comparable manner to current in situ methods that are used in level 1 reporting. And thirdly, we planned to design a fit-for-purpose dashboard that's tailored to the user needs and objectives and could be sustained over time. Next slide. So we selected Lake Tanganyika as our pilot study. Lake Tanganyika is a large transboundary water body, which is shared between Burundi, DRC, Tanzania, and Zambia. So transboundary water bodies have particularly scarce in situ data often, and this water body was not currently being reported on, but has huge social, economic, and environmental impacts. So it was a really good case study to start with. So through the co-design activity, we were able to learn about water quality issues in the area from 4 different perspectives. So from these 4 different countries, firsthand from the SDG focal points and water ministries who are responsible for actually doing the reporting and managing the water body. So this was conducted through an online co-design workshop, building relationship. There was also a follow-on in-person workshop in Burundi, which was funded through a different project, Kapitan Taki project, but was a sort of extension of the work we'd started, and an extensive survey where we collected information on the organization's attitudes, their capacity to exploit Earth observation data, willingness to do so, interest in Earth observation data, trust or concerns they have about Earth observation data, and more specific requirements for the indicator and the dashboard. So things like which water quality variables are most important, which temporal aggregation was required. It was also an opportunity for neighboring water ministries to connect more. So there's some relevance for SDG 17 on partnerships, which I've read is particularly important for Africa. And we also were able to reflect on the co-design approach, so lessons learned for next time, and how do we really kind of understand that word, and building long-term relationships, forming ideas on how to deliver much demanded capacity building activities, which was something that really came out of that first activity. So all of this information was used to directly inform the development of an indicator. So I think you can just click through there, yeah. And so an EO indicator for SDG 632 is one which can determine whether if you go back, sorry. It determined whether a water body was of good ambient water quality. So the indicator uses operational or near operational Earth observation derived water quality products from the EU's Copernicus program. So that includes chlorophyll A, turbidity, water temperature. Target values for water quality are developed dynamically using Earth observation baseline data, so which looks at each pixel and each season. So there's sort of this dynamic nature. And the method was designed to be easily relatable to the in situ level 1 approach, and transparent in terms of limitations and biases that we know exist in all types of data, including Earth observation data. So, and also that provides the users with the types of information specifically that they have requested. So next slide. The current composite water quality results look like this for Lake Tanganyika. So if we look at one reporting period, 2017 to 19, which demonstrates that we're using similar language to the in situ approach, 67% of the measurements met the target value. So overall, this is actually below the required 80% compliance required for good ambient water quality. So that's looking at change from the baseline period and how consistently that's changed. So next slide. So looking towards the future and global scalability of the EO indicator, a dashboard was designed also using the user requirements collected from different stakeholders, including the SDG focal points, and 2 personas, which were the national focal points themselves, and then other UN agencies and other types of users. So if we go to the next slide, here's some visuals of how the dashboard will look like. Next slide. And functionalities of the dashboard, including the ability to ingest in situ data for comparison. Next slide. And then just to kind of wrap up, the EO workstream and WWQA also co-organized a hackathon, which Nina referred to before, which is all about unlocking the global benefits of Earth observation for water quality. So this brought together a bunch of people from different backgrounds and different countries to discuss the steps related to how more people can actually start to benefit from Earth observation for water quality. And that includes local communities, marginalized groups, conflict zones. So really looking at what Earth observation can what kind of things can it fulfill and what needs to happen for that to take place. And this was also another activity that evidenced the huge demand for capacity building, which as a group we'd like to address more. So as a work stream, we're continuing to stay active and open, so you're welcome to join us. We have some follow-on work to do regarding the seed funding project. That means taking the EO indicator forward and the co-design relationship around Lake Tanganyika forward. We hope to wrap up some of our work in publications and public communications documents, which we're really working towards trying to improve transparency about this type of data, this type of information, and remove kind of any sort of smoke and mirrors about Earth observation data. We are also interested in future collaborations with other work streams and keeping the lookout for any further funding opportunities. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Harriet. Bang on time. Again, just for the interest of time, I do see there's quite a few questions in the chat, so I would encourage you to go to the chat. I think what we'll do is just to make sure that we can keep to the agenda and have a break. We do have some buffer time at the end, but I would request that we have the last presentation from Fabio, and then we'll have the break. And those, maybe you can answer some of the questions that are in the chat already, but we can come to a few of them then just after the break, so that if people have planned things around the break, we can stick to that. Thank you, and Fabio, over to you.
Okay, hello everyone. Together with John Simaika and Sandra Poikane, I am mobilizing this work stream that is about biodiversity and biomonitoring and assessment. Our aim is to achieve efficient and comparable biodiversity and biological monitoring and assessment in a global scale for inland waters. And I select out some main results of our work stream to show here. But to this end, we are working in collaboration with some organizations that I think that it's important to say here, particularly IUCN and Freshwater Bond and ISO. I think that our collaboration with ISO is very important for achieve our objectives, because if we can influence some standardization in ISO, we can scale up some of our results. I would like to highlight some outputs of our work stream, mainly that we published this year a paper about biomonitoring in the global scale. And we highlight in this paper that little was done in terms of biomonitoring in rivers and streams and lakes across the globe. But of course that it's academic results, but we also move towards more mobilization in terms of society. And I would like to highlight that we received some money from JRC funding to carry out 2 surveys, one about biomonitoring approach globally, and another about policy challenges associated with implementation of biomonitoring systems. I believe that the second survey was more important for our discussion here in terms of scale up and integration, because we ask for stakeholders and people who are really implementing the monitoring systems on the ground, what they think that is the most important challenge in their countries, and also solutions. So in the next weeks, we published and we will share this report, so we can discuss and build a lot of things based on the opinion of the people who work on the ground. We also received some funding, money, to write a technical report in our policy brief, and we will finish this in a couple of weeks. And we plan next week to hold a workshop in Switzerland to work towards harmonized guideline for biomonitoring. We are still working on this, but we think that it's important to meet people face to face to finish this output. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabio, for the quick presentation. In that case, since we're not quite at 3:30 yet, I would like to take advantage of the fact that maybe some that the colleagues presenting are still here, and to open the floor for some questions. And there's 2 questions in the chat that I would like to flag, but I would also call on colleagues to raise their hand on questions relating to the presentations that you've just seen. And so just the first one is for Iris Pitt. I saw Enoch had asked if Iris, could you give examples of some of the common chemicals and most affected countries? And so this was the modeling for ecosystems scenarios. And the other one, I'll call on Harriet to come in just after that, was from Abdul Ghaffar Memon on how many parameters could you be able to monitor using Earth observation, and is it applicable to different regions? So Iris, over to you first, and then to Harriet. And please raise your hand for other questions relating to these presentations. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so the question is if I'll be able to give example of some common chemicals in the most affected countries. Well, the research that was done with the CY index or proxy is that we really focused on the mixture of chemicals. So we have these 1,785 chemicals included in this mixture, and it's quite difficult to say these are the most common chemicals that are affecting this country, but we do know from other research that pesticide contains a large proportion. We do see that, for example, with the water body showing a good quality for the future scenarios, we see that there is the largest decline of good quality water bodies are in Asia and then Europe. But specific countries, I can't really give an example at the moment. Do you want to add something? Yeah? Okay. Hope this is clear. Thank you.
Thanks. And Enoch, if you have further questions, let us know. Since you're the one who asked that, hopefully that satisfies. If not, moving on, Harriet, over to you for the question, for Abdul's question.
Great. Sorry, my webcam doesn't seem to work at the moment, but
no worries, we can hear you well.
Great. Okay, so it's a good question. I think it kind of depends, I guess. So we have optical satellites which can detect water quality parameters that have optically active components. So we look at variables such as chlorophyll A, turbidity, trophic status. We can also look at the thermal range, so we can look at water temperature, and cyanobacteria, kind of more mature now, to look at certain bands in the electromagnetic spectrum that relate specifically to cyanobacteria and CDOM. So these are some of the kind of water quality variables that we can look at, primarily in the surface water. And we're also limited by things like cloud cover. So regions that have more cloud cover, you may have less images within your time period of interest. And also we're limited by resolution. So tending to look at larger water bodies and lakes because the water is more stable, and so you have less sort of interfering conditions. So that's in terms of water quality. We can also look at quite a lot of stuff for water quantity, which is also related to water quality in many ways. So the two go hand in hand. So with radar satellites, we can detect water level, volume, extent in a pretty mature and robust manner. So yeah, and then in terms of another point to make is about validation. So in Earth observation is never operating without in situ data, and it will never. The intention is, in fact, Earth observation communities always are demanding more in situ data actually. So in that way, there's a real interdependence. But a lot of the in situ data obviously is coming from the same parts of the world, which we know from the global north. We do validate, products are validated against a range of water types. So, you know, theoretically, the whole range of chlorophyll A, for example, is being the in situ data that is validating those Earth observation products ranges the full span, but the in situ data may be coming from geographically skewed areas, although big efforts are being made to overcome that. But it means that the products are applicable to global applications, but we're just less able to kind of determine the validation in certain regions. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Harriet. And Abdul, I saw you had a follow-up questions. So over to you if you'd like to speak, just to also check whether that answered your question, or whether there was a follow-up question on water quality index, WQI. So feel free to unmute. Otherwise, Harriet, I'm putting you on this. Sorry?
Oh, I saw that question about WQI, and it's good. We actually did explore WQI and other water quality indexes. I think it's WWCM. I'm not sure what the acronym is. And I think they require a larger number of variables, right? So it's 7 or more variables. Abdul, you can jump in here, but we did look at that, and I know that Carmen, who's also part of the work stream, is interested in looking into that. So I connect you both. And we went for a simpler approach just because we wanted everyone to be able to understand how the indicator was developed. But I'll let you speak now.
Thank you, Harriet. Thank you so much for giving opportunity, Nena. Just like I asked how many parameters, and you have very well explained that there are some of them, including turbidity, thermal range, cyanobacteria, chlorophyll, and so on. Recently, I'm working on similar project and trying to identify how many parameters we can identify using different equations to calculate from the satellite data, such as I found, and it's still in working, we can determine the BOD, COD, nitrate, and also we do the pH stability and TDS, chlorophyll values. So these are some of the parameters I'm trying to validate. You just mentioned the problem is with the validation, and particularly when we are getting the data from satellite. So maybe the cloud cover and the resolution also matters, and the data interpretation also has the value in order to properly calculate water quality index, WQI. So I'm more interested to discuss with you in detail. Recently, this is a project which is ongoing, and I'm trying to develop a related index, a framework that we can utilize to develop. So this is a little bit common. Thank you so much. And I think I will connect you more to discuss in detail. Many thanks.
Great, thank you. I look forward to that, and I think we have common ground to discuss.
Thank you. Thanks, Harriet. One more question for you, and then I'll jump to another one. So there's a question from Kishi Shen. Which standard was adopted for evaluating the water quality of Lake Tanganyika? Which season the result represents? Very rare to see water quality that is that poor in the lake. So I'll start with that one and continue the floor, or giving you the floor. And after that, we'll come to the question from Marijn that's on the chat, a very valid one as well that I would direct to Brian and to Stuart and Stephen and the Citizen Science Workstream. Marijn is asking about the policy guidance documents that have been developed so far. What has been their uptake, for instance, in national or local policies? Or what do you plan and how do you plan to monitor that? A very interesting question. So would love to hear the answer to that. But I'll hand it over to you, Harriet, for the additional question on your great work.
Great.
Thanks.
So for the EO indicator, it's seasonal data. So we take data there's data roughly every 11 days. So we take that throughout the year for the whole reporting period. So we end up with quite a number of images. So there's for chlorophyll A, turbidity, water temperature. And for each of those, we are looking at, for each variable, how much for that specific pixel and that month, how much change is there compared to the baseline period. So we're considering that if the water body is either, the water quality for that variable has either got worse or it has remained, or if it's got better or remained the same, then that's good. And if it has got worse, so that's if the turbidity has got higher, chlorophyll A higher, or water temperature higher, we consider that to be poor water quality. So the other option is that the user can define their own water quality target. So they can input that themselves and they don't have to use the baseline period. So they may consider doing that for different variables. So that's how it's defined. There's a lot of data per pixel, but of course some of the pixels have quality flags, and cloud cover, for example, require you to remove data. So there's sort of differing uncertainty values per pixel. So that's how we're looking for a way to really easily explain this. I have to add that as well, which is is a mastery of communication. And so we're getting there, and these kind of questions help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harriet. Lots of interest. This is all great work that's been presented, but so I'm happy that the questions are coming. And as I said, if you have questions, please don't be shy in putting your hand up. But one that's received a lot of interest, I had asked it before, and I'm wondering if Brian, Stuart, Stephen, or even Claudia, if you'd like to answer. This is the question from Marijn that I saw was lifted by Tarv. Have these policy, this is a question about the policy technical briefing documents on citizen science, on lakes. Have they been integrated into international frameworks? Have they led, or how are they leading? How do you see them to lead the development of new national or local regulations on water quality management? And what challenges have arisen or you foresee arising in ensuring their adoption and implementation?
I can, thanks, that's a very good question. I can come in on the citizen science one, I think, and I think it's, it's a problem, I think, with these kind of policy level documents that are created. How do you really track the impact? Other than kind of tracking the downloads, which is easily done, of course, as we do, through the SDG work and UNEP, through asking countries to report on this SDG indicator, we are working at that level. We are dealing with ministries, environmental protection agencies, national water resource management agencies. So when we approach them and we're talking to them about data gaps and how we can support them. We have this document in the armory, in our back pocket, so to speak, and ready to share. And that's the initial step. But it has only just been launched recently, so I don't think it's changed the world yet. But we're hoping that we have it there and it's something we can use as we go forward. I don't know, Stephen, if you want to add anything else on that one, on the citizen science one.
Yeah, only that we're also seeing this expand, not just in Africa, but throughout Europe, North and South America, and Asia. There's take up of including citizen science in regional river management plans, and the fact that we're using a transnational river in one of these case studies brings to the table the fact that ministries from countries are now dealing or looking at rivers that have communities that are engaged in monitoring and supplying data on a regular fashion. So, but as Stuart says, it's very hard to track the indirect impacts of all these great activities that these communities are performing. So.
Maybe I can say something also from the Friends of Groundwater. So we developed these guidelines with the objective of assess groundwater quality on a national scale, like large scale, to contribute to the final global water quality assessment. And so we didn't necessarily work together with governments. We worked like as a research group. And we got some data here and there from open platforms. But in one case, we got data from one government. We requested it. We said we were part of the alliance, etc. And then we had this method. So we prepared the results and then we sent them back to know what they thought of it. And they say, oh, nice, but actually we don't want to show these results because the water quality doesn't look good and we don't want to publish that anywhere. And then we didn't include it in our guidelines. So that's kind of our experience with one country. Like, yeah, they weren't happy to disclose this. So that's something that then I don't know how to continue with this type of work, especially for water quality. This is quite sensitive, that they don't want the data to be public. No, of course, I don't talk for every country, but yeah, a number of them are not happy to show these results.
Really interesting. I'll hand over to Brian and Marijn, who have their hands up. That's a very interesting topic.
Thank you, Nina. It's a really good question. I think it's something that we need to have a think about in the same manner that you've looked at the funding leveraged, is what the key performance indicators might be that are measurable for impact. This question is obviously about uptake of policy guidance or policy relevant documents, and that has a relevance across scales. So from the ecosystems workstream, for example, the work that we're involved with includes providing evidence and support on the development of new restoration laws. An example being in Chile, a pioneering lake restoration law that's under development there. And that draws on the sort of evidence reviews that we've produced through the World Water Quality Alliance, best practice on restoration, for example. And then there's a real opportunity, I think, to align with momentum that's created by global initiatives. And so obviously Stuart and the team on SDG 6.3.2, I've witnessed the change in the way that these guys are collecting data and working with countries, and there's a real push on in the background, and the citizen science and the Earth observation work streams are contributing significantly to that push. That's important. And then I think the final point I would make is an opportunity for the Alliance to contribute, and I know we already are, but just to recognise that we're contributing to global initiatives like the SDGs, but also the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and we've been providing evidence to support the FAO on the development of a report, as I mentioned in my brief slide, on the Target 2, which is to bring 30% of inland waters and other ecosystems under restoration by 2030. And that will require development of the national biodiversity action plans, and it gives us, that avenue to put the evidence on the table and make sure that the priority areas are included in that guidance. And the last point I would make is on climate change. So we've heard a fair bit about climate change, but less so on how we're engaging in the relevant policy mechanisms on climate change, like IPCC or the Climate Change Cup. And obviously national adaptation plans are in development, and that's I think a really good opportunity for us to try and make sure that management of water quality is front and centre on the agenda as countries are considering developing the national adaptation plans for climate change. So I think I'll stop there, but we think about it a lot. In answer to the question, we think about it a lot. It takes a lot of time to do properly, and it's something I think the Alliance it's an opportunity for the Alliance, I think, to grow into that area a little bit more.
Thanks, Brian. Those points are well noted. Marijn, I'll hand the floor over to you. And then I see also Katarina's hand is up. So over to Katarina after. Hi.
Hello, hello.
Okay.
Thank you. And actually, congratulations for so much interesting research. I again learned a lot, and it's really impressive what you've been able to do over the past year. And my question was indeed about what Professor Brian also said. So it's not about how many times have they been downloaded, but do you see that countries are more and more acknowledging citizen science based on your guidance? So have they been acknowledged in policies or river basin guidelines or things like this, which I think is what Harv also is saying. So I think that could be a very interesting way of looking at your impact. So have your methods, your guidance been uptaken by what adaptation plans, biodiversity action plans, maybe even water quality policy. So it doesn't have to be like a copy paste of the guideline, but more can you see that it has inspired policy development. And I think that could be quite interesting to look at. So thanks, and keep it up. It's it's brilliant what you've achieved over the last year.
Thanks, Marijn. Katarina?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that well, we have seen from our pilots that every pilot is a bit different. Also, in that final stage, that is from data to how they can be used. And as Claudia, I would like to share an example. For instance, we had a case where actually the project and the data that have been collected, although limited, they've been recognized as important to create a kind of critical mass and join with ongoing projects in the country that were previously been kind of neglected or not really taken seriously. So that aspect of really also maybe not creating more data, but establishing these networks with groups that are already working in the country, but in some cases are not listened to, is also quite important. But again, it depends on what has been already going on in the country and what is the also level of acceptance of different ministries and so on. So that was from our side. Thank you.
Thanks. I think that was a really important question. Really interesting also the reflections on it. And yeah, I agree. I think that's something that we can think about as well. Obviously, it's not a question of just monitoring the number of downloads of these documents, but how to monitor that outcome. I know that's something that can be a struggle in terms of the impact and outcome monitoring in many UNEP projects, including the large GEF GCF project. What are the tangible impacts of capacity building or producing these knowledge documents? I think one area where we certainly need to work more is getting them beyond the English-speaking world in order to increase that impact. I know that the Lakes white paper has been translated into at least French and Spanish. again, that's one area of improvement. I think it's so I think it's identifying where these changes happen. And I recall also chatting to Harriet actually about the Earth Observation Project. Of course, there's no policy brief yet, but about how that work in Lake Tanganyika helped also to open up the conversation between the SDG focal points. So again, something that's difficult to measure, but can be one measure, is this perhaps an increasing scale of cooperation on water quality monitoring matters. So I think that's another aspect to track. I think, yeah, Claudia's point on the countries not willing to share data, that's also really interesting. And I think that also highlights further the need to engage with the citizens to provide another means of pressure, so to say, on governments, on different level governments. That's somewhat disappointing to hear, but also interesting perspective. And Brian, on the climate change dimension, yes, obviously, I think that's crucial. I mean, we know that climate change often is talked about in terms of water quantity, but obviously this has a clear impact on water quality as well through the dissolution factors. Just recalling a little bit of when I was following the discussions on the UNEA resolution, there was more explicit text about the need to integrate water quality and quantity dimensions in, for example, national adaptation plans, national biodiversity action plans, naming specifically these different country documents that countries are obliged to provide under these multilateral environmental agreements. And there was a strong pushback by certain countries on these. So in the final resolution, you see that this text has been negotiated out. Now, I don't have the answer to this. I mean, I think there's many dimensions, obviously, not which highlights even more its importance, and it's certainly an area that we are looking at. We were working with the Water and Climate Change Coalition, which is now moved to the Global Water Partnership, but I think it's, again, another area where we need to have this understanding, and where we do see little by little more focus in these Rio conventions, which I know now are all having some kind of thematic day on water. So there's progress, albeit slow progress, but definitely something that we need to keep working on. But thanks for highlighting that again. I certainly agree. Lesha, I see your question. The nature reason for the pushbacks. I think it was, well, from what I remember, some countries didn't want to tie themselves down to reporting on water as part of national, or acting on water as part of national adaptation plans. I mean, as with, when I compare this to, for instance, UN agency collaboration, it takes a little bit more of an effort to collaborate with our other UN agencies in order to make sure that we can be aligned on issues involving the environment, on water quality, etc. It takes a little bit more investment in time and action, and it can be considered maybe the same for countries, that this requires more interaction between different ministries. If you have a separate climate ministry or environment or agriculture ministry, which is often in charge of water issues, maybe there's the view that they don't want to put this investment in, especially if it is a country that sees this as an additional reporting burden. Again, this had been proposed in the original text of the resolution that was put forward originally by the European Union. Yeah, and there's also, of course, pushback classically on things like transboundary water management. This could be one reason, but I think it's probably could be a fear of increased reporting, even though when you look at it on the implementation level, it makes perfect sense to bring these together. So there is I think a bit more focus on this, again, given that water is now entering also the COP, UNFCCC COP, the biodiversity COP, but yeah, clearly a need for more action. And Brian, I see your hand up, so.
Yeah, sorry, and I'm mistakenly clicking buttons, but the hand was I meant the hand. One of the areas, Nina, that we're looking at to try and get around this problem, because I completely recognise the point that you're making, the reluctance to bring in other environmental challenges to the climate change plans and the adaptation planning process. But one of the ways that we're currently thinking about trying to get around this is to demonstrate that some of the measures that are being proposed for climate change adaptation and mitigation with respect to things like tree planting, for example, and I know Kenya has some fairly impressive ambitions in terms of tree planting, as many other countries do. But it's the unintended consequences of those measures when they're implemented at scale on water quality, and that is not getting picked up broadly in the national adaptation plans, and that's, I think, a real hook for something like the World Water Quality Alliance to try and reach out to that audience, if you like, to say, look, there are these unintended consequences that may happen if you plant trees in the wrong catchment or in the wrong place. You might get soil runoff or habitat destruction of freshwater habitats. That might have knock-on effects on water quality for downstream ecosystems. That sort of narrative is something that perhaps the Alliance might be well placed to sort of put up the agenda a little bit. And of course the process to acknowledge those issues is there through the nationally defined contributions, national adaptation plans that are in place.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, there is actually work ongoing within UNEP on NBS that's looking increasingly at water quality. So that's an area that we're aiming to link to. And for sure, yeah, I agree 100%. However, with that, colleagues, I think we've gone over time, but thank you for your patience and flexibility. I think it was really good to have this Q&A session after the presentations, and I see there's a lot of activity on the chat as well. However, with that, I think everyone is ready for breaks.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Adam. Okay, hi everyone. Hope you had a good break. So I'm going to just talk about SDG indicator 632 and the update. Provide everyone with an update and say where we are with this indicator and its implementation. And it's very important to point out that there's a lot of work that goes into the collection of data from the national focal points, and it's between the headquarters in Nairobi, the GEMS Water Data Center at the Federal Institute of Hydrology in Koblenz in Germany, and myself here in Ireland as well. So between us, we collect all the data and we engage with all of the national focal points and our network through this data. But this indicator is just one of 12 within SDG 6, and even that is a big task to coordinate all of these efforts across the UN House, and there's lots of different agencies involved, and each of these agencies is a custodian of one or more of the SDG indicators, and UNEP is custodian for this one, 632 on ambient water quality, 651 on integrated water resource management, and 661 which is about freshwater ecosystem extent as well. Next slide, please. And just to say the way that we work and the way we collect the data for this indicator is that, as with all SDG indicators, it's the UN agencies work with the national statistics offices in each country and the relevant ministries or departments or agencies within each country. So for this indicator, it's often ministries of water or ministries of environment that we work with, but sometimes EPAs and water resource management authorities and agencies. And we work on this kind of 3-year cycle. So there's been 3 data drives, as we call them, as we go out to all member states and we ask them to report on the indicator. First one in 2017, in 2020, and the most recent one was last year. And there are 2 more planned in 2026 and 2029. And following each data drive, we put out an indicator report, a progress report, which was launched just at the end of September in Stockholm World Water Week. Then right now we're in the process of this feedback survey. where we go back to our focal points and we ask them for ideas and insights and feedback on the implementation of the indicator to try and improve it, and to, not just the indicator itself to make it more useful, to improve our implementation of that indicator. And then that feeds back into the data drive preparation before we get going and get going again for the next data drive. And to keep this kind of moving, we provide a full range of supports and services, and this really helps to kind of extend GEMS Water's work. GEMS Water, as many of you know, has been around for a very long time, nearly 50 years. So it's and the mandate and the reason for its creation is the same. It's just as valid today as it was in the late 70s. Next slide, please. So this is the target, the SDG target 6.3. So it's by 2030 to improve water quality by reducing pollution, eliminating dumping and minimising release of hazardous chemicals and materials, halving the proportion of untreated wastewater and substantially increasing recycling and safe reuse globally. So there are two indicators, 631, proportion of wastewater safely treated, and this one, the proportion of bodies of water with good ambient water quality. So the two are obviously related. If you improve wastewater treatment, you improve ambient water quality, but ambient water quality is dependent on many more factors than just the wastewater. But we can, there's a lot more to it, but there's very close links. And just to comment quickly on what countries actually report. So they don't have to send us their actual water quality data as such. It's the output of the assessment. So we've devised this methodology which countries apply on their data, and it's the output of this, and they can choose to report at the national, the river basin, or even the water body scale. In addition to the classification of water bodies as either good or not, to help us, to give us greater insight into how the indicator was calculated, we asked them for information on the water body type, whether it's river, lake or groundwater, the number of water bodies that were included, number of monitoring stations and the number of monitoring values that were used in the calculation of the indicator, and really importantly the target threshold values, or the water quality standards which they applied to their data to determine whether the water body was good or not good. Next slide, please. And just to say, just quickly, you can go back to the other slide. You can see the link. There's a screenshot of our water quality hub, and that's where a lot of all our materials and the results and everything can be found through that page. And the link's at the bottom. And on the next slide, there's a QR code that takes you directly through to that hub. And this map shows you the latest 2023 results. And so this is, as with all SDGs, the indicator is distilled down to one single number for each country. And there are obviously lots of weaknesses with that and lots of nuances which are missed by doing so, but it is an important part of the indicator methodology. But what's really important through the implementation of this indicator is not just this map, the indicator score, but it's through that additional information that we collect. It gives you great insight into how countries are monitoring and assessing their fresh waters. And if you think back to the actual target, it's not about whether your water quality is good or not. The target is about improving water quality over time. So it's the trend information that's more important than the absolute score that any country is reporting in any one year. On the next slide, please. And this is one of our kind of key messages from that additional information that we request. We ask for the number of measurements. So this is the number of pH and nitrate and phosphate measurements that countries are using to calculate the indicator. And this graph just nicely shows that it's the total number of measurements from countries which have been grouped into different quartile bins, into statistical bins based on their GDP. So quite simply, the columns to the left are the lowest income countries and the columns to the right are the highest income countries. Over 2 million measurements, sorry, go back again, Adam. So over 2 million measurements were used to report on this indicator in total in 2023, but only 60,000 came from the lowest income half of the world. And that's just simply not enough. And you can dig a little deeper, because this bar chart's broken down by water body type as well. And you can see there's a real kind of skew, a bias towards river data. When you go outside of the highest income group, then you're seeing like lakes and groundwaters are really not monitored at all. So it's something that really needs to be pushed. Monitoring in general needs to be improved, but also for lakes and groundwaters. Next slide, please. So this latest indicator progress report that was launched recently, this is some of the key messages and the other key messages. So the great thing is that the number of countries reporting is increasing, which is great. So that's going from 39 in 2017 right up to 120 this year. And this actually does mean this pushes us over a threshold now, which means that all the different SDG indicators are categorized into different tiers by the interagency expert group on the SDGs. And up until just yesterday, this indicator was classified as a tier 2 indicator, which meant there wasn't enough data in the database. But now, just this morning, that's been upgraded to tier 1, which is great news and gives us a bit more impetus to keep this going. So what that means is, with this extra data, this is great because we can start to do a bit more analysis and start to understand what's going on a bit. And we can see that where we do have good data, so in those high income countries, the indicator does show that water quality is generally degrading just a little bit. But any of the other line charts that you see there for the other regions, we simply don't know. They're not robust enough to really tell us what's going on in those countries in terms of water quality. So it's a great insight. It's something we kind of know intuitively, but it's great to see it reflected in the data, is that there is simply not enough in situ water quality data to understand what's going on. And so what does this mean? And we've estimated that by 2030, which is the end of the SDGs and the Agenda 2030, is that the health and livelihoods of up to 4.8 billion people could be at risk. Because essentially the water bodies that they're relying on are not monitored, and we've no idea how they're changing over time. So we don't know if they will be able to provide the ecosystem services in the future which they're providing now. So action on water quality is needed, but even collecting these basic parameters, and bearing in mind for this indicator at level 1, it's pH, nitrates, phosphates, conductivity and dissolved oxygen. Countries are struggling to do that, so there's little chance that they can be able to to monitor and assess the impact of all the other different threats and pressures on water quality. Next slide, please. So there were these huge data gaps. So what are we doing about it? So we have, as we've heard earlier, there's great work on the citizen science, Earth observation, and there's modelling work underway. And as we mentioned earlier, there's 2 countries now have combined citizen science data as part of their 632 submission, which is a great start. It's not enough, obviously, but it's a great start, and we're hoping this will really get the ball rolling. But for me, I think personally, it's this idea that the monitoring data is just one part of it. You know, we can't monitor our way out of the crisis, but it is an essential prerequisite. It's something that has to happen if any of the next steps, the improvement and the protection, are going to be effective and measured, and we understand how they are, if they are working or not. So it's this real data gap that's the problem, and this is why the World Water Quality Alliance was established in the first place, to try and work out better ways of filling this gap. Next slide, please. So just to say, like on how we help countries, there's a range of different supports that we provide, from indicator calculating, monitoring program design and things, and this is building on the kind of broader general water quality monitoring and assessment support that was provided through the GEMS Water Capacity Development Centre, and all the products that centre produced. And this does range from very intensive support right through to very light support. But another kind of benefit from this work is that this has been going on for 8 years. So we've been able to provide, to connect with the individuals, with the organisations who are tasked with doing this work in each country. And this is absolutely invaluable. And I think it provides that kind of that connection between UNEP in this case, and our partners through the World Water Quality Alliance directly to those in countries, which is not always easy to establish on a long-term basis. So it's another kind of added bonus of the 632 work. Next slide, please. And here's just one good example that was led by our colleagues in the GEMS Water Data Center, based on originally the focal point there went through and did the training course, the postgraduate diploma and masters in water quality monitoring assessment. And through that work, the data management in the country was highlighted as a weakness and something that needed to be improved. And incidentally, that's actually an area which needs to be improved in most countries, I would say, from my experience of working with countries. But in this instant, one of the end products was a new database management system, a data management system that helped to not only organise the data and get that in, but automatically calculated the indicator score. And we're using this as the basis for additional work that we're doing, and hopefully we'll be able to roll this out on a much broader scale. Next slide, please. And just one last slide is just to say that in addition to the indicator score itself, this added insight really is, the added bonus is that it provides countries with a kind of a benchmarking tool. So we developed this concept of a relative monitoring capacity index. So countries can look at how much data they're using, the temporal coverage, the spatial distribution, the target threshold values, and the types of water body that are used for SDG 632 reporting, and use that, and they can ask themselves that question: is this enough really to meet the objectives that we set ourselves on protecting and restoring our nation's fresh waters? Because in most cases it's not there. There's a big gap, and often these policies are put in place even around sort of drinking water, for example, or ecosystem protection, but they're not backed up by sufficient data. There isn't enough information to work out whether these policies are effective or not, and they're not even measured or tracked in many cases. So this just provides one kind of simple way of understanding whether, not just whether, but where the monitoring program can be improved. That's it. Okay, last slide. I think that's it. And just there's a link to the latest progress report, and if you can contact us through the SDG 632@un.org if you have any further questions. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Stuart, for the very comprehensive presentation. I wanted to hand over first for questions, and apologies for joining slightly late because my computer decided to restart just in the middle of the break. Always charming when that happens. I believe there was a few in the chat from Stain. What is the trajectory of the indicator in general? Are there regions where the trend differs from other regions? Yeah, are there regions where the trend differs from other regions? And I know you had talked about the kind of the paucity of data and the kind of poor 50% of the countries that reported, but maybe yeah, quick answer on that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a quick answer. It's difficult to say because we have looked at the data by geographic region as well, and there are different trends going up and going down, staying the same. But it is difficult because, again, if you're looking at the regional scale and you've got these mixed bag of monitoring reporting capacities within that region, then it's difficult to draw any conclusions from it, and you can only really look on a national basis, case by case. It's the only way really to do it. So it's hard to say, really. I think the data is just not there to answer one way or another, to be honest.
And Tarb is asking, can you share any successful case studies where citizen science data has significantly contributed to the management of water resources through sharing data? I guess we can refer to the earlier presentation as well.
Yeah, there is, and in the progress report that there was a link to at the end. There's a focus box all about the impact of citizen science work on, and we talk about Sierra Leone and Zambia, who are kind of champions in this, but also the other work that we mentioned earlier. So there is lots going on, and it is, to be honest, it's very difficult to keep up with the citizen science work because there is so much going on. And we are, as part of this, the citizen science work stream, we do I think we forgot to mention it earlier. There is a working group meeting scheduled for early next month. That people can join if they'd like to join, and I'll share that with you, Nina and Anna, if you want to put that in the outreach for this meeting.
Great, thank you. And how do you see, Stuart, just a question from my side, is how do you see some of the work streams from the Alliance, and you kind of liaising more with them in the interest of kind of having more data, especially from those level 2 indicators, feeding into what will hopefully be more data in the 4th progress report?
Yeah, there's huge opportunity to join together and join forces, especially like around the citizen science work, of course, the Earth observation and the ecosystems work stream, and there is a lot of work going on in the background, and the BBMA work stream as well, and the plastics work stream. There's work ongoing to try and create the idea being, the concept being to create kind of SDG ready information that can be made available to the national focal points, and they can choose to report on the indicator if not. But regardless of whether they choose to report or not, it doesn't matter. At least that data is coming together. It's better if they do, of course, but that data is made available, and it can be shared, not just it's shared broadly. And that's what we're planning to do through the SDG Water Quality Hub, is to make these data available and bring them together into one place. And there is lots of overlap, and as I mentioned in one of the comments earlier in the chat, I think it would be really good to try and strengthen those links between the different work streams for this particular objective in the future. So as more money becomes available, hopefully that's something we can build upon.
Great, thank you. I'll just take 3 more questions, if you could answer very briefly to them, and then we'll continue on. I think they're very interesting questions, so I'll put them out there. They're from the chat. So from Brian, can you tell us more about the roadmap for SDGs 6.3.2 to 8 countries in developing their monitoring and assessment towards supporting restoration plans? From Bruce, is the global map based entirely on level 1 indicators? Has any comparison been made between where level 1 indicates good, yet where level 2 parameters would indicate poor? For example, where groundwater has extensive arsenic or fluoride. And finally, from Jerome, 2 countries seem to have done a good job with water quality monitoring, which are Canada and Russia. Is this because there are lots of lakes on the boreal shield, and these countries do monitor more than others?
All very good questions. Very good. I'll start with Brian's. So on this roadmap for the SDG, using the SDG information, so it's there as a kind of a demo at the moment, and we're hoping that countries do pick it up and use it. So it breaks things down, and it's a kind of a relative like league table, and essentially of the different sub-metrics of this indicator. So based on the country's size and how wet it is, that's a kind of main thing. And then we look at how many monitoring stations, how many monitoring values are used to report on the indicator. So that kind of creates a kind of a league table. So we're not actually stipulating exactly how many a country should use, but using the size and the wetness of a country, it allows countries to benchmark themselves against other countries. So you can use this as a tool to go to your colleagues and say, look, we're not we're not monitoring as much as our neighbours. And you can look at this at the global scale, and you can break it down by GDP bins, GDP quartiles, or even regional bins. You can look at it different ways. And then the idea being is, once you've got this information, actually to map it against the restoration targets that a country may have set for itself. So if they really do want to seriously improve their water quality, they have to be having sufficient data to feed into that decision-making process. But that's answer Brian's question. On to Bruce's point, the main map, the initial map that I showed was that was just the level 1 data. That's the only data that makes it through to the official UNSD, UN Statistical Division reporting. The level 2 is, there are a few countries that did report at level 2, and but it's not mandatory, so countries, it's an optional extra. And there's some case studies that we have in the pipeline where we're really doing exactly what you're suggesting, Bruce, is comparing the difference between the level 1 and the level 2 score. And arsenic and groundwater is a very good example. But also pathogens in the water quality is one that we're focused on in Nigeria, for example. Saying a water body is good ambient water quality based on those five very basic parameters can be misleading. We fully appreciate that and have done from day one, and that's why we do have this level 2 workflow. But it's still, I do believe that it's water quality means different things to different people, and even getting that topic out there as a discussion point is useful and helps us to drill down into it a little bit and to try and understand why it's so important to monitor water quality and to do it properly. And then we can answer those more important questions, as is it safe to drink? Is it safe for recreation? Is it safe for different things? So, but even highlighting the lack of monitoring capacity in many countries, even to do this basic ambient water quality monitoring, to understand these kind of broad spatial temporal trends, that's a first step in many places if you want to build on that and to do any more targeted monitoring programs on top of those. And to Jerome's question, yeah, another good one. It's especially large countries as well. It's very difficult for them to monitor. Fully in Canada and Russia are, of course, very large. Canada actually did do a level 2 report as well, which we're planning to feature as well. It could be something to do with that, but I think it's probably more to do with the amount of data that's used and is it fully representative of the country. But again, I'm always reluctant to draw comparisons between one country and another, and it's more countries with itself and how things are changing over time. I think that reflects better the actual SDG target and is more useful, I think.
Great. Thank you so much, Stuart, for the rather elucidating answers and update on that, which indeed I think shows quite clearly the water quality data gap and how I think we could justifiably call it a crisis of many sorts. So moving on. So we're coming to moving on with the kind of third part of the agenda. And this focuses a little bit more on the future of the World Water Quality Alliance. I'll go through and speak quickly about the most recent UNEA resolution that was adopted earlier this year, and which kind of gives a very strong, solid mandate for UNEP to work on water, which aligns directly with, what the WWQA is contributing directly to. And then I'll also introduce the transition scenario for the Alliance and how we see the future going forwards. So just very briefly on the UNEA resolution, and again, just for those who, I think everyone here is we've spoken a lot about UNEA, but UNEA means the UN Environment Assembly, which is the world's highest level decision-making body for matters related to the environment. And we tend to say that it's a bit like the UN General Assembly, but focused on the environment. So it's where all 193 member states convene. They take the agreement on the wording adopted in these resolutions, and also the subjects of these resolutions kind of reflect and set the global environment agenda and provide overarching policy guidance, identify emerging environmental risks and challenges, and also sets a direction for UNEP to work with other partners, notably other UN agencies and other stakeholders, to achieve these various goals. So we just concluded the 6th session of UNEA earlier this year. They've been held now over 10 years. And over these years, as we heard, we have had a number of one water-focused decision so far, and many decisions that have been related to fresh water, and which the Alliance is contributing to as well. But I think, again, the bottom line here is that these UNEA resolutions are available in public through that QR code. You can see the ones adopted at this session of this last session of UNEA. And there's about 15 resolutions, and now these have been hammered down and negotiated, but they have been agreed on by essentially by all member states. So these are supposed to reflect a kind of global agreement on environmental matters and how to handle them, and what language to use that has been globally agreed on. So this most recent one, which was a water-focused resolution, is a resolution on effective and inclusive solutions for strengthening water policies to achieve sustainable development in the context of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. So very much ties water to what we call the triple planetary crisis in UNEP. Of course, recognizes that the world is not on track to achieve water-related SDGs, and it calls on member states to undertake actions. And it has then another list of tasks that UNEP is mandated to do in collaboration with UN agencies and other relevant stakeholders. Next slide, please. And we can see that, just wait for this to come up. Again, this specifically notes the importance of water quality in mitigating the risk of health challenges. So water quality is contained very much in this resolution. It expresses concern at threats to water quantity and quality, and it also calls on member states to enhance the collection and monitoring of reliable, up-to-date water-related data, including on water quality and quantity, and increase their use for evidence-based decision-making across sectors. So that, again, is a call to member states to increase their collection of data, including for SDG indicator 632 monitoring and otherwise. Next slide, please. And so the Alliance is directly contributing to the implementation of this resolution by kind of starting to work on early. It mentions the use of early warning systems for water quality, and looking at how, for instance, technologies can be used to identify pollution hotspots. So that's something that we're trying to do. And it also calls, importantly, on UNEP to work across its divisions and units to enhance collaboration on freshwater-related issues. And this is also why we see it as so important in the Alliance to link to what our colleagues in the Global Wastewater Initiative and Freshwater Ecosystems unit are doing, for instance, on looking at the use of NBS for increased water quality. It calls on enhancing liaison with relevant United Nations entities, strengthening collaboration with the UN system-wide strategy on water and UN water, and enhance action to improve data provision, including through capacity building, and to track progress relating to SDG 6 indicators. And of course, promote dialogue and collaboration on water-related traditional, local, and indigenous knowledge, which we have started to do. So again, while we have kind of this is a resolution where kind of all the various units in UNEP who are working on freshwater are contributing to. We do see that that the Alliance, again, does contribute directly to this. And as I said, it's really helping us to also enforce the need to work across UNEP and across UN agencies, given that there are so many issues that water quality relates to, even if they may not be working directly on water quality. And other examples are AMR, textiles, that are other areas that the Alliance is exploring on how to possibly set up a work stream around. And of course, many other UNEA resolutions also, for instance, these ones that were adopted at UNEA 5, we heard about, for instance, the one on sustainable lake management that our ecosystems work stream is contributing to, but there was also one adopted on sustainable nitrogen management, where of course water plays a key role, and nature-based solutions. Yeah, where our activities, where we either have reported against or where we are also supporting UNEP's implementation of these resolutions. Great. So that's a quick update on the UNEA resolutions, which form kind of part of this global context on water. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So going forwards, and really looking at the Alliance and what's store next, there are a couple of, well, there's one big challenge in that we are reliant on extra budgetary funding, and the Swiss Development Corporation has very generously supported us for the last few years. Unfortunately, they can't continue this support past this month, and so we are in the process of fundraising, but also putting in place the transition scenario. The feedback that we generally have include from this community and beyond is that there is a clear need for the Alliance to continue its activities. And this is a quote from one of our technical advisory committee members. The network has an incredible potential to unite specialists and actually make a difference. And there's obviously concern about the loss of opportunities after all the hard work, where we saw that there's been, when we calculated, over $2 million of other resources leverage that have been put in by the work streams. So it's not easy to raise funds for this type of global initiative, global network, even more so in the current political situation, where we are kind of being faced with restricted funds every day as the UN. Next slide, please. So, but we do very much are committed to maintaining the Alliance. Just because we don't have funding, we do have a transition scenario in place where UNEP, through the Global Environment Monitoring Systems for Early Warning for the Environment Unit, will continue the Alliance coordination role, which kind of aligns with the mandate, given this mandate was given to UNEP and using UNEP's convening power. So again, the intention is that the Alliance will continue as it is, no change to its structure or functions, but we do aim to streamline the coordination between our GEMS water colleagues and the Alliance. And of course, some of the work streams that are more aligned to the work of the GEMS water work plan, which is specifically, well, very much focused on monitoring SDG indicator 632. Those work streams they already work together, but they'll continue to work even more closely together. And we do also intend to continue supporting through the coordination team those work streams that may not fit directly under GEMS water. And so again, we'll continue to prioritize strengthening the in-kind contributions from the partners and through different modalities, whether this be, again, and this doesn't mean that the funding necessarily needs to come to UNEP, but we're also trying to, again, work with partners so that we can help connect them to different calls, different funding flows, different calls for tenders so far through these communities of practice that have formed under the overall banner of the Alliance, and especially in those cases where where they've connected to different disciplines that kind of takes them beyond, for instance, a technical focus. We do have a resource mobilization strategy that I'll come to in just a bit in the next part, to really align these actions and priorities as we're seeking funds from donors and other entities for how to continue this work. So again, kind of the bottom line is that the coordination team will be staffed for the next year. Bit smaller staffing, but it will be staffed. We'll continue to work closely with the other water related units, and of course we also have continuous exchange and learnings coming from the other global environment monitoring initiatives that UNEP convenes, for instance, GEMS Oceans and GEMS Air, who function very much on this partnership model, so that these strategic agendas do not stall. Next slide, please. So again, in conclusion, we're not going anywhere. Please don't panic. We'll continue to streamline and to also see how to be more efficient in our work through aligning more with the GEMS water colleagues. And as you saw during this meeting, there is also already a lot of alignment so far. It is a crucial initiative, and we fully realize the work that's been put into the Alliance so far, which is why we're charting and trying to get an estimate of the kind of the monetary amount of those often in-kind resources that have been put in, and it is a significant amount. And so we have an incoming a new advisory committee, where we will be sending out the call for elections soon, but this will really be one of their priorities, and continuing to discuss, of course, also with our other UN agency colleagues on how to on what type of strategic partnerships to pursue. And just to mention, we do have the WWQA Vision and Strategy 2030. This sets a kind of vision going forwards for the future for the Alliance. So we are kind of executing our functions according to this vision and strategy that was developed with large inputs from the strategic and advisory committees. Thank you for that. And also some internal brainstorming. And so what this does is it really builds on the convening power of the Alliance to promote the exchange of information, knowledge, and experience. We aim to kind of more and more leverage a nexus approach to ensure that water quality monitoring can really fit within these other critical areas: One Health, energy, food. This is kind of coming out a bit more organically as the Alliance has matured. But what we're also seeing is that, again, water quality is so connected to so many different areas of work. We've kind of started with the ones, at least within UNEP, that relate directly to freshwater. But of course, there are many, such as our food systems work, One Health, which are inherently connected to water quality, where we would need to link to as well. So the vision outlines kind of 3 focus areas, or these were called previously pillars, that we can use to better organize the Alliance and to really operationalize it. And this goes actually hand in hand with a proposed kind of consolidation of the work streams, which are currently in a list. So the aim is that this provides a bit more structure and a clear kind of elevator pitch to the Alliance as we're as we're approaching donors. And so the three focus areas are data to action, water, energy, food, ecosystem, health nexus, and citizen engagement, citizen science, and capacity development. And so again, the aim of data to action is to enable data to, again, take that data and actually feed it up, feed it forwards, not just have it sitting on repositories or in scientific papers, but to really use the structure of the Alliance to have it used and to also help monitoring those solutions for improving water quality. And of course, water, environment, food, energy, and health nexus. This kind of relates to, again, I mentioned the One Health, food systems. These are all water dependent areas, but also to the global biodiversity framework. And I guess we could actually add the climate change aspect in here as well, where energy is concerned, given the inherent links between biodiversity, energy production, food production, and water. And where citizen engagement is concerned, I think that we've heard a lot about. And again, what's key here is really to ensure that we build that that area of understanding with local communities and get them to participate in the generation of data, identify the problems that they're facing, but also connect to these, what I think are often very abstract global networks, such as SDGs, SDG indicator monitoring, and maybe, especially in the case of countries who may be reluctant to report their data, give them a means of obtaining that data, monitoring that data, monitoring the data of industrial installations that are impacting their water quality, and to raise the alarm on this and raise their voices on this as well. So those are kind of the three focus areas. And when we come to the consolidation of work streams, here again, we've been thinking about a framework for these work streams. And now maybe this could be a kind of matrix together with those three focus areas. But when we were looking through them, so on one hand, we have a number of work streams that were based on projects. We're moving away from that model and really aiming to have work streams like the ones represented here, where there's a really active community of practice, bringing them forward, meeting regularly, seeking funding for workshops, for bringing together these work streams in order to produce, for instance, white papers or communication products, and to, how would I say, democratize that information. And when we looked at them with the coordination office, we kind of realized that, well, this is our proposal, but that these work streams could fit under three different buckets, so to say. So you have one on data, and again, specifically looking at what type of data can be used for monitoring water quality, to report on the SDG indicator, but also to produce data that can be used by countries and methodologies that can be used by countries to get a better picture, overall picture of their water quality. There are, again, several specific pollutants that we are currently working on, or that we've discussed working on. I think a lot of the ones there, these maybe fall more under the emerging pollutants category. So plastics, microplastics, antimicrobial residues, wastewater, specific pollutants coming out of textiles, and PFAS, which are these chemicals coming out from plastics, and where we have kind of increasing data, but not quite enough of the large kind of variety of these contaminants of increasing concern, not emerging concern, but increasing concern. And then finally, as a means of enabling action, there are some work streams that provide concrete tools, as we would see, to countries, to communities, and actions that can help them act, whether it's to improve water quality monitoring, to improve the messages, getting across, raising awareness, be it through capacity development, kind of increased translation of data to policy, social engagement, which we heard about a lot today, or something like ecosystems. Although, and actually, nature-based solutions is in here. So this is kind of again, this links earlier to what especially Brian had mentioned about the increasing use of looking at nature-based solutions for water quality solutions. And actually, something that could be here is also that link to national documents such as NBSAPs or national adaptation plans, and how to kind of integrate water quality improvements there to those unintended consequences. Next slide, please. Actually, so I'll stop there for any comments. And the next section that I will very briefly go through is identifying fundraising opportunities. And actually, just for the sake of time, I'll go through that and then open the floor for comments and views. So again, as we mentioned, we are in full fundraising mode, looking at the critical areas where resource mobilization is required. We have the coordination and operational costs, which includes, most importantly, staffing for the Alliance coordination team, which is central to kind of coordinating the Alliance and all its work. And of course, part of the funds that we've had and that we see as vital are these seed funding, these opportunities for seed funding, which we've disseminated, and as I said, which have had at least a 1 in 4 ratio of return, and that have enabled our partners to undertake work and then to kind of keep generating funds and action based on the activities funded so far. We would also like to see funding for capacity building, community engagement, still some kind of funding for advancing on a global water quality assessment to really bring together all this great work and great data that's been undertaken, and then connecting also to innovative solutions and technology investments which link to the seed funding. So next slide, please. And this is where where we come to the kind of resource mobilization strategy, which we've drafted. This will be, in fact, one of the first tasks for the incoming advisory committee. It puts together kind of a lot of the work and progress, or the where we haven't seen progress from the last months, but we have identified through it a few of these key partners, and these include, of course, key partners to target for resource mobilization, whether it's for UNEP or whether it's us helping the work streams continue their work in the interest of getting a better global view on water quality data. And so, of course, this targets the traditional or bilateral cooperation through donor countries, but going beyond even donor countries that we know have traditionally had water as a priority. So, for instance, a lot of European countries whose resources are now restricted or have been cut due to many obvious reasons. There are a number of Gulf countries as well that are putting increasing investments on water that we are trying to reach through our West Asia office, but which unfortunately we haven't made any breakthroughs yet, partly due to the fact that I think our colleagues who are based in Lebanon are struggling quite a bit with the ongoing conflict there. But again, that's an area where we'd love to hear from you if you have any any particular suggestions. Private sector engagement, of course, when it comes to CSR, is one avenue, again, a very non-traditional one for most UN agencies, but something worth exploring and where we would love advice as well. Philanthropic foundations is an area where UNEP as a whole is looking more at for funding. And when we've done an overview, there are several that actually do focus on water. They may, in some cases, be focused on a certain geographical area, which isn't an issue since we work globally, and which could be used again to direct work to some of our, for instance, citizen science work relating to a particular region, for instance. So that's one where we've had some inroads and at least have set up or have coming discussions with some large philanthropic organizations and foundations. In terms of partnership with global NGOs, this again is mostly through collaboration to identify any calls that we could direct our work streams to. Again, I mentioned working with our UN, other UN partners and multilateral institutions. And I think this comes into play when we can have which we already have, but kind of in a starting state, a cost benefit analysis and kind of proof of concept of what has worked. And again, coming to, well, community-based funding, which is again these smaller calls. Now, we've done some work. There had been some seed funding that went into the social engagement platform to help develop these stakeholder engagement and fundraising development documents. And again, this is all with the aim of reaching out to these much smaller funders who, of course, have smaller, much more localized funding opportunities focused on local communities, but which nevertheless should not be ignored, especially when trying to reach that local level. So again, as I said, that's kind of an outline of the resource mobilization plan. I think that's my last slide, but again, yeah, look forward to hearing any thoughts from your side or recommendations, or if there's something missing there. And something that we are thinking of doing as well is having really a targeted subcommittee as part of the advisory committee that can focus on really reviewing the resource mobilization strategy and kind of assessing how, if it's missing anything, how we're doing against it, and to assess, yeah, where that value added could be. So to maybe provide a more marketing angle to this. And I see, Dominic, your hand is up. Sorry, I couldn't see the hands for a minute, but Dominic, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nina. So just a reaction. So thank you for this analysis. So it's not an easy topic. We know that. We discussed bilaterally on this opportunity, and funding kind of coordination mechanism is even more challenging. So I think the track of going to bilateral donors may be the most promising one. So we have to continue that. I'm happy to join forces. I think we have to think broader, not only the topic of water quality, but it's about water. And every synergy we can find with funding of water quality aspects could be something interesting. And you might have heard that France, together with Kazakhstan, I think, is launching the One Water Summit in December. It will be in, where is that? In EAU, I think. And there is a kind of preparation of declaration, and I made sure that water quality is in as well. So that may be a track to discuss with France if they feel that may be something for them. So I'm happy to make some liaison here. And you're talking about philanthropic foundations. I don't know if you're in touch with the Aga Khan Foundation, because they have a broad interest on climate, on society, on forestry. It's all connected in a way with water quality and water quality. So that may be a track to follow as well. I have some contact there that we started from WMO. And I know that the African Development Bank is targeting. They would like to broaden the scope of their investment into water. And they will have a kind of internal discussion in November, I think, in a couple of weeks, on to check the appetite on investing more on water, generally speaking. So that may be a thing as well. I'd be happy to discuss with you on that. But I think if we do not connect the WWQA to the broader scope, not only SDGs, I mean, but to something like the early warning for all, which is not only on quantities, but so health should be an hazard as well. It is a hazard. And climate resilience. So we might have something. So we have to really think that that business model that WWQA has, which is providing support to many other initiatives, and then to get a kind of funds coming from those initiatives, because that's the most efficient way to support all those through the monitoring system, which is a burden for many players. You can do that, and we can do that. So maybe to think as well on the major projects that are ongoing through the Adaptation Fund, through the Green Climate Fund, to see if there is a thing that we could leverage there. So it's only initial thoughts, but I think we're happy to discuss further. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Dominique, for also the ongoing support and brainstorming in this area. I see there's a lot of chats coming up as well, which we will need to save. And I'd just like to ask if there's any more hands, any more reflections, recommendations, on the topic, on this topic, and where to fundraise from, or any reflections on consolidation of work streams or what I presented before. But thanks to Dominic for those, for the excellent points. So let me just go through some of the chats. Private sector beverage companies such as Coca-Cola is into water security and water stewardship. Actually, we were connected to Coca-Cola, to a colleague in the Coca-Cola EP who I've been trying to follow up with. No response yet, but yes, thank you for that, Mary. I do. Yeah, I'm aware that they are dependent, obviously, on clean water. So yeah, Claudia, I see your hand up. Over to you. While I'm reading through the comments and trying to save them as well.
Yes, thank you. No, I just wanted to comment about the consolidation of the work streams. That I think it's really good, actually, that now there are these three groups: data, pollutants, and solutions. So like the Friends of Groundwater, for what I saw, will be in the data. And yeah, I was also thinking about what it was discussed during the meeting about how to help the local groups to act. And this is something we struggle as a work stream because we are very scientific. I think all of us are researchers and we don't really have that link. And I think that even if we want to have it, I don't think we have the capacity to really reach a local community unless we are working already with them in a project from our work, you know. So I think that from one side is good, let us stay like in our maybe scientific bubble in a way, but also I think it will be really good to receive maybe some support from the central coordination or maybe from the other work streams that are in the more solution side on how we can be more engaged in that area, what we can do. Like I personally don't really know how to solve this, how to approach this. Thanks.
Thanks, Claudia, for highlighting that, and I'm glad you found that helps. Thought went into that, so I'm glad that it seems clearer in terms of the organization wise. Again, if there's any inputs on how to facilitate that. I mean, we have the social engagement platform, and kind of we heard that there's some we have over 100 local water forums, so that could be an entry point. But in terms of actually operationalizing that, we do need to make improvements to the structure. But that I would see that as one way of maybe helping you directly in those areas where you work to connect to these local groups. But I think it's always difficult to come out of your kind of area and the audience that you're traditionally working for, and to translate those findings in language to another type of audience, especially when it's quite intricate science that's concerned. Aisha, I see your hand up. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Nina, and the entire audience. I'd just like to make a rejoinder to Claudia's point. Actually, I had this point come up in the previous discussions. Myself, I have been a representative of a local group in the social engagement platform, and we've been doing a lot of citizen work on the ground with local government and at the district level, but starting with the local council committees in monitoring water resources. And now I'm also working as a researcher with Earthwatch Europe, and based here in Oxford now. But it's with the experience I have supporting social engagement platform and local communities is if we can inspire commitment and action from governments, from the centralized points of policy and decision making, to decentralize community engagement and data management and reporting on SDG 6.2.3, water ambient quality. It would be a very good starting point if we can involve the governments and decision makers quite from initial stages of our programs that we are carrying on as researchers or as implementers in our different capacities in this area of water quality and citizen science. That way we can garner their commitment to be part of this process, and also feel have a certain level of confidence to share with us their data and know the importance of citizen science in water quality and why it's important to manage and monitor water quality for improved and future better resource conservation. That's what I wanted to put across in terms of good governance. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Aisha, for your views. And actually, while you're there, given that you have this, you've been kind of involved in both the local water forum and as a researcher, how would you see, or do you have any success stories then of your work on how to kind of bring these different worlds together?
Yes, Rina. I think some of the success stories will be just the work that Water Quality Alliance is doing to make the work known about what we are doing. For example, I first came across Water Quality Alliance through AMCO, African Ministers Council for water, and this was through UWASNET, Uganda Water and Sanitation NGO Network, where our community-based organization is a member. So you see that it's a systemic change, quite of approach that the Alliance is doing, and this is a very big convening power for the Alliance, coming across different platforms that are both international, regional, and even local. So getting in touch with the Alliance and getting to know what the Alliance is doing in terms of water quality is something that was really inspiring for and empowering for a community-based organization like ours, Rural Water Initiative for Climate Action, so that when we were able to get a training on citizen science and equipping our organization with local equipment on monitoring the water catchment area in Impanga and the Lake Victoria Basin in mid-central Uganda. So we're able to get equipment from Earthwatch Europe that came down to Uganda and trained us. And that way, people were involved in water quality monitoring because we're working with women groups and farmer groups. And we equipped them with knowledge on how to monitor their own water sources. And people were now seeing the efforts of their own conservation, that were able to see their own conservation efforts by them monitoring their water quality, knowing what's the problem, what is the solution that we can come up with, but also sharing this knowledge at the district level. And the district is now able to share this information in the National Water Atlas. So people now are empowered, and that's how I think research can come down and it's translated into action at the grassroots level. But how to get governments involved is to, first of all, initiate them and make them part of the process right from the beginning. And I think this is one of the programs that Freshwater Watch is really doing excellently in Sierra Leone, and we're looking into scaling into other Great Lakes basin countries, like, for example, Kenya and Uganda. I'm seeing also Lake Tanganyika, which is a very big transboundary water resource. So we're looking into these areas, but it's a great way to see that we are gonna also inspire political commitment into this kind of work that we are doing, which I believe is very important and critical at a moment like this, when we need to safeguard water quality for human health, but also aquatic life and the entire ecosystem.
Thank you, Aisha. Thanks very much. So we're nearing the end of the meeting, but thank you for, again, I was just reading through some of these, some of the recommendations that came in through the chat. So we have connecting with, well, we talked about the private sector, connecting with populations that are typically not included in the science work, social justice and indigenous knowledge and leadership, and calls for action from specific countries, insurance and agricultural sectors. Excellent idea. And feedback on the African Development Bank. Yes, which is certainly a key one. Thank you for those recommendations. So surely we'll take those on board when kind of revisiting that resource mobilization strategy. And now, if there's no further comments, and again, even if there's something that comes to mind that you've mentioned that you want to share, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We don't have the email address here, but I think everyone here knows where you can reach us. Again,
emails on the next slide.
Emails on the next slide. All right, so that's coming. So I'll do a quick wrap up. Before that, I would like to ask, we have the co-chairs of the Strategic Advisory Committee, Lesha And I believe we have Richard Ellerman on the line as well, although if you would like to say any closing comments. And we also have Philip from the Technical Advisory Committee. This is an open invitation, just if you'd like to say a few words or reflections, if you're still there, before we wrap up the meeting.
Well, I'll give the floor to Philip first, and then I'll talk because Richard is actually in a hospital bed, so he has been following us, but he doesn't want to speak because of his condition. So I'll speak on behalf of us. But Philip, go ahead. You first, if you're still there. I saw you just now. Or Nika, if she's there.
Oh, I won't put Philip on the spot. There was just a call for any reflections, any recommendations, especially, and thank you to both of you and to Richard Ellerman and to Nienke Hofstra for co-chairing the strategic advisory and technical advisory committees of the Alliance, and to all the members of those committees. There's many here who've also contributed so much of their time and kind of and wisdom in developing the vision paper and helping us move forward. So I'd like to also say a big thank you. Thank you for that support, in addition to everything that the work streams have done. Lesha, I'll hand over to you, and then I'll proceed to close up the meeting.
Okay. Well, I'll follow up basically on some of the last slides you showed, Nina. I think the three main points in the vision that you showed again are very valid. But at the same time, we know that they are probably also the most difficult ones because of what they involve in terms of work and in terms of funding needed. So you were also stressing that one of the items was to keep leveraging, asking for in-kind contributions. And on the one hand, being a volunteer forever myself, I appreciate that, but at the same time, I want to warn for it because like the last item that we were discussing on the capacity development, I think there are people who are willing to help the local communities to understand what citizen science is, how they can develop their local forum, how they could implement science. But for that, it's both time. People might be willing to volunteer that, but it's also out-of-pocket costs. And I think that is a large part of the problem, that it's not only time, but also out-of-pocket costs. So if we're doing funding, then we have to be very careful that if we say in kind, that it's not just the time people are volunteering, but that we still need to also have the means to support those people to do their work. So, and there are two different aspects. So that's one reflection. Another one is I'm happy that UNEP will continue with some of the coordination work. I hope it doesn't mean that Annem, who I want to compliment again on her work, needs to do even more. So that we make sure that on the one hand, the coordination and the help is there, but at the same time that we don't overload our esteemed colleagues in UNEP. And I think it's very important, again, to go back to earlier discussions. How do we, on the one hand, make sure that a lot of the relevant interest in research that can be done through the work streams is actually translated into information, hands-on support and knowledge for the local groups to implement. So as you said as we said in the vision, from data to action. And that probably is crucial also when we try to mobilize more funding from potential sponsors or donors, that we can showcase how that happens. It's probably our best selling point. Having said that, from where I'm standing, thank you all for all your efforts and work in the last period. I'm waving goodbye in terms of being in the SAC. I will not be opting to be in the advisory committee, but I'm happy to continue the discussion on how we can involve the stakeholder engagement platform more and better, and help those groups to help us to do our work better. So two ways traffic. And that's my last little warning. If you do research, and I appreciate what one of our colleagues was saying, don't take what people locally do for granted. So if they help us with citizen science, data collection, that is extremely important. But at the same time, make sure that they feel that you're actually acknowledging that and making sure that the out-of-pocket costs are not theirs. So thank you all very much and keep up the good work. And of course, I'll keep following it closely. And well, thank you again. And Nina, back to you.
Thanks very much, Lesha, for those important points. And yeah, for emphasizing also what to consider when working with the local communities, who, as we've seen, are such an important part of this work. I think just very briefly, and then we can go to the last slide. So again, we are ready to work with you, and again, continuing on the great collaboration so far. Thank you to everyone who's joined, and thank you for, even beyond this meeting, just all your work and collaboration and collegiality to help solve this enormous water quality crisis that we have. We'll continue to work towards this, to operationalize these many plans, and continue the fundraising work. And we will be having maybe a key priority activity. We'll be having elections for the advisory committee positions. So those will go out soon. They will be going out shortly. We're aiming to have very regionally diverse, very, how would I say, multidisciplinary advisory committee, who will be filling big shoes, certainly, but very much looking forward to working with the incoming advisory committee. And again, there may be some subcommittees created, and even for those of you, Lesha, thank you for your offer to support, even though you may not be formally on the advisory committee, we still would very much reach out for advice and support, and very much look forward to working with you. Thank you, everyone, for your time for this meeting. It was really rich. We had great inputs, and I really enjoyed the discussions. As mentioned, do get in touch with us for any questions. We'll be sharing this recording down the line, and yeah, stay tuned for more. Thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure to work with all of you as part of this community. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.